Okay, good evening everybody. Welcome to the August 8th, 2019 meeting of the Penfield Planning Board. Allison, please call the roll.
Hetzke.
Here.
Knauer.
Here.
Tidings.
Here.
Burton.
Here.
Nursinger.
Here.
Sangster.
Here. All right. We have minutes from our last meeting. Hopefully you were all able to get through the lengthy missive that they were.
Put a lot of time into that one.
I'm good with it. I'll make the motion and get it complete.
All right, we got a motion. Somebody second?
I will second. I did review them.
Okay, great.
Hetzke.
Aye.
Burton.
Aye.
Knauer.
Aye.
Tidings.
Aye.
Okay. Zach, you want to start going through our table with action items?
Yes, sir. Your table item this evening requires no action. We've received no updates for that project. So if you're ready, we can welcome our guest to the table. It's for 1229 Bay Road with Simply Crepes, a proposal for opening a new business location there. And
Welcome.
AJ, I'll kick it off to you.
Mr. Chairman, I will recuse myself from this.
Okay.
So I've got, I just brought the drawings that you have on the screen and a little rendering just so if you want to see the grass areas.
Okay.
And there's a floor plan, you can take one and pass around. I'm just going to keep just one of each. I forgot to grab, sorry.
I don't know if you want to like scooch that way so that you can maybe sit over so you're not sitting right on Terry's computer.
No problem.
Feeling, okay, then go back.
Cool.
Might make someone. No, I'm just kidding.
So, good evening, I'm Randy Bebout with T.Y. Lynn, Pierre Veru, owner of Simply Crepes, and Sue Kim, the realtor for the property. Been working with Pierre on this project. So, first off, we're really excited about this project. We think it's a great location and a great use of this site that our understanding has been vacant for about 2.5 years. So with this project, there would be really minor modifications. I mean, most of the work on the building will be the interior. We'll change the signage out front, and then the major things would be the addition of additional pavement areas for parking spaces. Currently, there's 9 spaces there. We're proposing 32 spaces, adding an additional handicap space. The amount of impervious that gets added is about 0.2 acres. And in addition to that, adding an enclosure to be able to run his business.
Enclosure.
The dumpster enclosure,
okay.
sorry.
That's all right.
So no changes to the access either into the adjacent property or onto Bay Road. Those alignments pretty much stay as they are. So just a little background, if you don't know, Simply Crepes has a location in Pittsford, a location in Canandaigua, and a location in Raleigh, North Carolina. So this would be a new location for them.
I had the same thought when I heard Raleigh.
Family,
Our goal is to grow the business, and we thought that there was an opportunity that was presented to us during the Great Recession. We looked at the demographics in Raleigh, North Carolina, and we said, yeah, it would be a great place to go. So,
doing well.
doing very well.
Good.
So, yeah, so we're here tonight really just to get some feedback from the board, and ultimately our best case scenario for tonight would be to have this board provide a letter of support to the zoning board and to the town board. This project requires a conditional use permit for the restaurant use. Zoning board, we will be seeking a variance for parking and for buffer setback. I would note the existing building, because this is adjacent to residential, this is limited business. The existing building doesn't comply with that, and then we're expanding the parking further to the rear of the property. I think the setback from the rear property line is approximately 7 feet. The dumpster enclosure is probably half of that at the pinch point, if you will. So we would need those variances from the Zoning Board of Appeals. Sort of the big thing here, of course, is the that we would need is the parking. So we've been working very diligently on maximizing the parking on site, talking to the adjacent Steinmiller Insurance Company, and even talking to the plaza about figuring out all the options that we have here to satisfy the parking requirement and really ultimately minimize the variance that we need. So 32 spaces proposed on site. There's 12 spaces on the Steinmiller Insurance property. Pierre has worked with them, and they're going to enter into a shared parking agreement for 10 spaces. And also has worked with the plaza. The plaza is very excited about this project, that Simply Crepes wants to come to this location. Certainly, they're thinking that'll help drive some of their business, and they're willing to allow Pierre's employees to park over there. Unfortunately, they're not willing to enter into a shared parking agreement, but they have no issue with his employees parking there. He's going to provide some additional insurance for them, whether one of his employees damages their property or they had damages to their vehicle or something happened. So he's looking at some insurance options there to sort of protect himself and protect his employees. So the parking that we're proposing is based on an occupancy of 75 people. The floor plan that we provides for about 63 seats. What's shown on the plan is about 14 tabletops. That might be a revision to that ends up to about 16 tabletops. That's important from the fact that Pierre's sales receipt, if you will, is about 2.3 people per receipt. Generally speaking, this is couples, this is families coming in. On a rare occasion, you would get an individual that would come in and sit down at a table. So if you just took the tabletops, I mean, that equates to 16 vehicles. We have double that in parking. His peak times are really the weekends, Saturday and Sunday, when the insurance company is not open. So he'll really have access to all those spaces on the weekend. We'll have access to some of those during the week, which his peak time during the week would be your lunch hours.
Can I interrupt for a
Yes,
second?
absolutely.
All right, so the rationale for getting more parking is more to meet the code requirement
Correct.
than actual need? Would that be a fair
That is a fair assessment.
assessment? So your other restaurants, what's the parking situation like there? What have you looked at? Okay, how many tabletops versus parking spaces, and how does that all equate?
Well, our closest proxy to that is that ratio that we know, roughly 2.3 people per check is what we have. In Pittsford, we share parking with all the other tenants of Purple Properties LLC, which includes Aladdin's, Coal Tower, the brewery there. So, and then the other
So it's
retail
impossible
business.
to see
So we share about
just
about
regular
180
space.
parking. I'm not sure how much actually is ours. I mean, we're also sharing it with the public that comes in to park to walk the canal and so forth. So it's challenging, but we make it work. We have a thriving business there. In Raleigh, North Carolina.
2.3 people. Okay, I guess I'm thinking, all right, if it's lunchtime, you might have 3 cars for 3 people. So, hey, well, let's meet for lunch. Dinner time, be something
Yeah, but
completely different.
I mean, that can happen, to your point, yeah.
I'm
People might be
really
meeting.
speculating.
Sure, absolutely.
It's interesting because again, I just came from the restaurant in Canandaigua today, and generally speaking, we've got couples, we got families. We did have some situations where it was 2 individuals were meeting there. But on average, I believe that stat of 2.3 is pretty close to what we're experiencing. It's 2.3 per check. I'm going to say it's pretty darn close to that per vehicle that's coming in.
So with 16 tabletops, you think there'd be 16 times 2.3? Or so there'd be...
I'm believing that we would we'll probably have 30 to 40 people in the restaurant and 16 cars in the vehicle.
Okay,
Right.
so then your assumption would be that there'd be roughly 1 car per tabletop.
Roughly.
Yeah, and I think you
Roughly.
make a great point, though, that at lunchtime you might have people meeting, coming from different
I might have
locations,
it.
so, but we have some really buffer built in for that.
Okay.
And that's basically, I'm seeing that the per check average is consistent at all 3 of my restaurants, running between 2.2, 2.4. It's that,
Right there.
that's why I'm using 2.3. It's very consistent at all 3 locations. It may have a lot to do with what I'm selling, the demographics of people who are coming to see us. It's family friendly, it's couple friendly, that's the nature of my business, so.
Right.
And it's been consistent. I mean, I've been in Pittsburgh for 16 years. I've been in Canandaigua for 11 and Raleigh for 8, and those numbers are they're right in there. They don't vary very much from those 2.2 to 2.4 every year.
Your other
Okay.
locations, do you do much takeout business?
You know, we are starting to do more takeout. So Grubhub is becoming a bigger part of the industry, and we do participate with Grubhub in both our Raleigh and our Pittsburgh locations. Canandaigua does not currently offer Grubhub.
Okay.
Right now our takeout business is still in that 5 to 10% range. It's not a huge item right now.
Okay, besides services like that, individuals too, would you
That same
say,
thing,
or-
individuals. It's we do. Takeout is still less than 10% of my
Okay.
business. Yeah.
Okay, Randy, I guess we did mean to interrupt, but.
Sorry. I mean,
Conversation.
So we've talked about really what the site improvements are. The other aspect of this that I did mention was the desire to have a patio seating area out front. We've shown that on the plan, currently showing roughly 4 tables. I don't think that would get any higher, maybe it gets lower. You gotta sort of figure that out, but just to offer some seating, obviously, in the summer months. So other than that, there's not a lot of other changes to the site. We'll have to address stormwater mitigation. There's no changes to water service or sewer service. Changing from a jewelry store to a restaurant, you'll have a 3-compartment sink with an internal grease trap under the sink to address that. We are talking about, obviously with moving the parking closer to the residential, we're talking about some kind of privacy fencing along that north and west property lines to essentially screen that parking from the neighbors. There'll be some landscaping incorporated into this project. Just haven't got there yet. We're expecting our site survey here any day, and we'll start looking at those details. So yeah, as of and the green space is really close. Last calculated, it was like 34.5%. So we're a little shy on the green space. Once we get the survey, maybe there's something we can do to meet that. But we're sort of anticipating we'll need a small variance for the green space.
Okay. Okay. What's everybody think? Actually,
Yeah, you gotta look at that.
2 of you guys.
You gotta look that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it looks like you have a cross connection, so you have an agreement with the insurance company as far as,
So you're saying that the insurance guy is saying verbally he's okay with it, but he doesn't want to enter into anything
No.
contractual?
The Plaza says that.
Yeah.
The 2 women that own Steinmill Insurance, their attorneys has said they are willing to enter into a cross-access easement agreement
Okay.
Our
with
formal template.
with the town of Penfield, which
Okay.
would then grant us access to their parking.
Gotcha.
So however, in discussion with the owners of the plaza, they absolutely want us there. They said, absolutely, we'd be silly if we weren't encouraging
Right.
you to make this happen. We want you to be there. We will do everything we can to allow you to park. Your employees, if you need guests to park there, that's fine as well. basically they're saying they do not want to tie their hands up with a situation where they're leasing parking spaces. They said we're in the business to lease space, and parking is part of what we want to provide to our tenants, so they don't want to limit their ability. So they said, but we're going to give you access to that space, and they've asked us basically to indemnify them for any potential damages that our employees may cause to their property, or in
Vice versa.
or whether, or vice versa, or whether or if an employee gets hurt while they're walking on the property and so forth. So,
Right.
so the idea is, and we're totally in agreement. I've already talked to my insurance agent. It's not an issue. It's an additional insurance document we provide them. It's not a big deal.
How often do you anticipate vehicles would need to park there? Would you have your employees park there every day?
I
Or-
would begin with saying that my employees would park there right
Okay.
from the beginning.
And
Absolutely.
I would just add one thing that when I mentioned that we looked at a lot of different options. One of the options we looked at prior to him understanding that he wasn't going to get an agreement from the plaza was just simply restriping the plaza. If you look at the aerial, there's some really wide drive lanes. So we did, and unfortunately I didn't bring that with me, but we did a couple different layouts of the plaza where we could gain 21 spaces by simply restriping. The only thing that would really be required is adjusting some light pole locations, but, just gaining some efficiencies in the plaza itself, still maintaining, the normal 24-foot drive lanes, normal parking stall size. You could gain 20 to 22 spaces. If you pushed out into the front green area a little bit, you might get that up to 28 spaces or something. So, we don't know what the future of the plaza is, if something wonderful happened there and all of a sudden, they said, geez, we're a little short on parking now. There is options there that something could be done there to increase their parking.
Okay. Okay. Jerry?
I don't, so whether they're asking us for, I mean, I think I'd like to see something go in there. I know it's been vacant for a while. I mean,
It's
so
great to
they're,
see you go in, for sure.
Yeah.
but it's gonna be up to zoning, right? So we're just giving them our blessing.
Yeah,
and
what are
go-
we being asked to do here?
As Randy started out, the board's willing to write a letter of support to the zoning board, or just, document that in terms of the proposed site plan improvements. You have no objections to the site plan improvements, or are supportive of the way they propose to accomplish shared parking. We can communicate that to the zoning board, and obviously, like you said, Terry, it's completely up to the zoning board and up to them to make their case, show the hardships, and ask for the variances needed. And then after that, if the zoning board grants everything requested, they would come back to this board for final site plan approval. This is more of a, because the business exists, parking exists, the shared parking has begun. There's already a document in place. It grants one-way access right now, so the idea is there. This would kind of be buttoning up a lot of loose ends for us, actually, and that would be the process going forward.
Okay.
So it's really up to you guys.
I'm all right with that.
They wanted to get your opinion really first without going through the
Yeah,
formal
I
sketch
just
plan
don't,
application.
I just don't like telling the zoning board what to do.
And by no means we're looking to do
It's up to
that.
them.
It's
But
more
yeah,
of a, are there any objections to what they're proposing at this time?
Well, they have their
in
own minds
concept?
anyway, they don't listen.
Yeah, but I don't like
to us
doing
all the
that,
time.
yeah, but I mean, other than that, yeah, I mean, with the way Randy worded it, like, no, I'm not gonna say like, oh, yeah, we don't have any problems with any of these variants they're requesting, go ahead. Like, I don't wanna get into that, but yeah, as far as what they're proposing, yeah, I'd love to see them go.
Yeah, this is the first step of its many. We just wanted to come tonight
Yeah.
to sort of
Sure.
get your feedback and,
Wants to give it to you, I'll do it.
Yeah, I'm in support of sending a letter off to the ZBA.
Okay. It'll be similar to what I just stated too, so
Yeah.
a very general statement about not objectionable to what's being proposed here to accomplish the parking and addressing the buffering concerns, as laid out here, and providing like that fencing that you talked about, Randy, or additional landscaping, whatever's necessary, and then kicking it off to the zoning board and letting them do their job.
Let Randy work his magic.
and again, I don't know if it makes sense to do that to the town board also, because we need their approval on the conditional use permit. similar thing. I mean,
Actually,
you
you
don't
would
do that, I'm just,
you would be going through planning board and or zoning board for conditional use.
what's that?
You would only be going to planning
Oh,
board
okay, I
and
thought
zoning
I was
board.
under the impression we were going to town board. for
Oh,
that.
sorry, if
My
I communicated that, that's on me
My
probably.
apologies.
But no, the planning board and zoning board can handle that. It's not, there's
Okay,
nothing special
perfect.
about this district. So,
Okay.
2 boards, not 3.
Okay,
Nice.
even
Yes.
better.
Yep,
See, good news already.
trying.
A lot of good news today.
Yes.
All right, somebody want to move to send a letter?
I'll move to send a letter to zoning.
Hetzke,
Aye.
Canower, Tidings.
All right.
Great, appreciate it.
All right, well, that's it.
All we can do.
I'll follow up with a
Yeah.
letter, send it to everybody, and then we'll see you at the zoning
luck.
board.
Thank you so much, really appreciate it.
Thanks for coming in.
Do you want these back for
No, you can
your
keep going.
future meeting with them?
No, you're
Okay.
you're good.
I know. See you.
Take care.
Welcome back, Jim.
Thank you. Hey, Jim.
The record will show that Mr. Burton has rejoined after his cigarette break.
Whoa.
Don't smoke. I'm just trying to spread vicious rumors about you.
You're very good at it.
Yes. Do we have any other business that we need to discuss before the public hearing?
Nothing at this time, no.
All right, then why don't we recess and reconvene at 7 o'clock for the public hearing. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the August 8th, 2019 meeting of the Penfield Planning Board. We'll begin the meeting with a Pledge of Allegiance.
It's right there.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you everyone for coming tonight. We have 4 items on our agenda this evening. I'll just spend about 30 seconds explaining how the process works, how our meetings unfold in the order of business for those of you who haven't experienced a planning board meeting before. The applicant will come up to the podium, present their concept and the project to the board. The board members will ask questions of the applicant, matters of clarification, that sort of thing, and then we'll open it up for audience participation. If you'd like to speak, I don't know if are there sign-in sheets back there? There are little slips of paper on that table when you come in the door that you could fill out your name. We don't have a huge crowd tonight, so that's not really necessary. So when we open up a project to public comment, just raise your hand. I'll call on you as people call on people in class. And please come up to the podium, introduce yourself, give us your name and address for the record, and then please address your comments to the board and not to the applicant. And the only other thing is a matter of housekeeping. Please turn off your cell phones or silence them, and we can get started. So Zach, please read our first application.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Application number 1, DiMarco BayTowne Associates, 1950 Brighton-Henrietta Town Line Road, Rochester, New York, 14623. Request under Chapter 250, Articles 12-12.2 and 13-13.2 of the Code of the Town of Penfield for preliminary final site plan and conditional use permit approval to construct a new Starbucks restaurant with drive-thru service and associated site improvements on a 34.12 acre property located at 1900 Empire Boulevard. The property is now or formerly owned by DiMarco BayTowne Associates LLC in Zone GB. Application number 19P-0018, SBL number 093.02-1-23.111. All yours, Paul.
Chairman, members of the board, Paul Colucci with the DiMarco Group here tonight on behalf of DiMarco BayTowne Associates. As Zach read, the application we're here tonight seeking preliminary final site plan approval and the conditional use permit to operate the Starbucks restaurant in Baytown Plaza. This is a minor modification to previous site plan approval that was granted by this board in 2008. which at that time was for the redevelopment of Baytown Plaza. You recall we did the cut-through, and we had at that time also shown 2 pad lots in the center of Baytown Plaza. At this time, we are moving one of those pads, which at the time was referred to, I believe, as Building L, and we have come to terms with Starbucks on a lease to locate within the plaza in a 2,000 square foot Starbucks with a drive-through. The building will be located just inside the main entrance, just south of DeBella's. And on the site plan, which I prepared for you, if you're familiar with where the ESL drive-through is, DeBella's right here, the main entrance coming in. Empire Boulevard is just off the page to the top.
Is there a microphone on that podium?
There is. If I move away again, I'll grab it.
Yeah, thank you.
So
The green light's on.
it is. So we had an opportunity to meet with PRC, I believe last month, or it might have been all the way back in June. We showed them some initial layouts. We got some feedback from PRC. We made some changes that we incorporated into the application. The plans have gone through, and we did get a second round of comments for PRC, and the plans you have in front of you are updated plans that we resubmitted last week, addressing all the comments to PRC, we believe satisfactorily. Ultimately, you're familiar with Starbucks. I don't think there's much I need to tell you about their operation. They sell coffee, and they do it real well. And we're excited to have them in the plaza. All of the utilities for this this building will be accessed directly within the plaza. Water, sewer, electric, and gas are all in the plaza, and we're able to access that without any easements or any utility extensions. We did prepare building elevations that have gone back to Starbucks for their review. We've agreed on the building elevations, and we submitted those along with the application. We've incorporated a lot of the materials that you've seen in the plaza in the past. The cementitious material is that limestone base. We tried to adopt some of the materials but give this building its own identity. We show on the site plan what I believe is very safe and appropriate ingress and egress for the Starbucks. We've tried to isolate the drive-through lane from the rest of the traffic within the plaza, and we provide in excess of what the town requirements are for queues within that drive-through, as well as in excess of what Starbucks would like. Parking is shared parking within the plaza. We maintain the overall parking ratios. As we come in with each additional application before this board and working with town staff, we keep account of what square footage we have on this application versus what we had approved as part of the redevelopment, and additionally including the Walmart, which was part of the rezoning and a subsequent site plan approval. So my hope is that you find everything satisfactory, and in the interest of keeping it short, because I know you have a long agenda, I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Thanks, Paul. Can you speak a little bit more to the queuing for the drive-through?
Sure.
I'm looking at the plan, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It looks like you could get maybe 9 cars in line before they start interfering with parking.
Correct.
How often would they anticipate that happening? Is it every morning that they're going to have 15 cars backed up, or is it typically less?
Yeah, so their standard is 7, is what they have set as their national standard. So it's 7's a minimum. They like 9, and you can see that based on this plan, we have 9, as you said, AJ, before it starts to interfere. And the reason that I laid it out where the predominant traffic movement, the predominant traffic movement is going to be in off of Empire Boulevard. We would have wayfinding sign here, Starbucks, drive-through, arrow. They would come in. We wanted to isolate the drive-through so we didn't get any stacking back into the perimeter ring road. And they're able to come in. They have their initial menu board, their order board, and then they come to the drive-through, which is on the south side, and then exiting back out. So the flow is really in such a manner that it doesn't interfere with any of the other traffic patterns in the plaza. If by chance in the morning, peak hour, they do queue up, the way that I laid it out, it's more than likely that if someone sees the drive-through queued up so much, they're just going to choose a parking spot and go inside.
And just for the record, for clarification, on the plan, so it took me a while when I was looking at it to really identify, even though I saw the north to the right.
Yep.
But effectively, McDonald's is to the, above the drawing.
Correct.
And
Correct.
Empire Boulevard for anyone who's looking at the drawing online or
Yep.
on
Correct.
TV. Okay. Speak a little bit, if you could, to the traffic flow with the ATM machine. That to me is the most awkward part, if there is an awkward part of this flow. The left-hand lane just seems to force a U-turn that seems a bit tight.
Yeah, we showed those movements so that we could demonstrate that you could make a left or right maneuver out of there. Obviously, if you were in the westbound drive-through lane or ATM drive-through lane, you could easily make a right turn as well, as in same thing for the west or the eastbound ATM drive-through. You could make a left out. The introduction of Starbucks is going to bring additional trips into the plaza, which we've accommodated or we've accounted for within our traffic studies. ESL will be pleased with the increased visibility to their ATM facility. We have reviewed this with them. We are talking to their real estate department. And the most important thing is, while we're under construction, is maintaining access to that. So we have a note on the plan. As plaza owners, we will make sure that when we are under construction, we have adequate access to the ATM facility.
Okay. Lighting, looks like there's some building-mounted decorative sconces, no other changes to the plaza lighting?
Yeah,
utilizing existing poles and fixtures?
Yep, exactly. We move one pole, and we're going to reuse that pole on a new pole base in a location just north of where it is. It would have fallen right in the middle of the outdoor patio, and it would have been a bit awkward, so we're going to relocate that about 10 feet to the north. The lighting levels will remain the same. The exterior lights on the Starbucks building, the sconce lights, are simply decorative. They're not contributing any illumination. And then there's lighted bollards along the drive-through lane just for wayfinding and identification and just, illuminating the curb.
Sure. Okay. Any other members of the board have some questions?
I'm good. I don't.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
Paul, could you just review, that's going to require flipping a sheet, just for the board, how the landscaping's been laid out to minimize the sight distance leaving both of those stop bars
Sure.
as you leave the restaurant?
So, and Zach, this is an earlier version
Oh,
of
yes,
the
it is.
landscape plan.
Yes, it is.
But in the packet that you have, we did receive comments from the town's landscape consultant, and one of the concerns they had was the landscaping in the patio was pushed out right to the edge of the curb. We've pulled the patio back a little bit, and we've given a little bit more green area, and we've pulled the landscaping in, and we've modified the type of planting so that it's not anything that's tall that's going to be a hindrance for any type of vehicle conflicts.
Okay. Good. Would anyone in the audience like to comment on this application? Okay. Any further comments from you?
No, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to present it to you. We're excited about it. It's just,
No.
I'm sorry.
We have a question.
I'm sorry. Did you happen to bring any sample materials with you?
Yeah, if we could take a look at
I
those,
did.
that'd be great.
I can run through.
Sure.
So you mentioned in the application materials that you were going to be using the same limestone that we're using for a water table and a base course on other buildings around the plaza.
Yep.
That we've asked other applicants to provide. So I just want to verify that this is the same stone material that we're using in other.
Yeah, that product right there is the limestone material that is on the inline buildings. It's on the building, the U of R Medical Office building to the north of Baytown. It's the same material that we used on the Verizon building, and it's the same material that McDonald's incorporated into their architecture. This material that you're seeing right here, this sample, will create essentially the predominant material on the west and east elevations, and then there will be ephes on a portion of the south elevation, north and south elevations, and then there's a wood siding product that is going to make up the remainder of the architecture. This is the predominant wood siding product. You see the darker material, and then under the canopies is the same product, but just a lighter stain color.
So that dark material is on the brand wall areas.
Correct.
And I think you mentioned in your responses that the dumpster enclosure is also going to use similar colors as those wood elements?
Yeah, so the initial application showed a board-on-board dumpster enclosure. Comment from PRC came back and said, could you consider, adopting some of the building architecture into that? So we would side the exterior of the dumpster enclosure would be in this same material, which is it's a kiln-baked material. It's not a typical wood that would need to be stained every year. It's a product that Starbucks has adopted, and we've chosen to incorporate a little bit of it in there to give their identity to that building.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, Jim?
No, I'm good.
Okay, Paul, thanks.
Thank you.
All right, Zach, item number 2.
All right.
We'll let Paul clear his stuff out of the way, and our second guest can start setting their stuff up while you're reading.
Sounds good. Application number 2, Penfair Plaza LLC, 2465 Ridge Road West, Rochester, New York, 14626. Request under Chapter 250, Article 12-12.2 of the Code of the Town of Penfield for preliminary site plan approval for a future commercial building and final site plan approval for a building addition, parking modifications, and associated site improvements on an 8.89 acre property located at 2200 Penfield Road. The property is now or formerly owned by Penfair Plaza LLC in Zone GB. Application number 19P-0017, SBL number 140.01-1-3.1.
Good evening, Matt Tomlinson from Marathon Engineering. We've got Michelle with the architecture group here with me as well to talk about the building once we get there, and then representatives of the owners as well for answering any questions that are above us. So, as Zach mentioned, Penfair Plaza, 2200 Penfield Road. We're at the northeast corner of 250 and 441. We've got a large tenant, Rochester Regional Health, looking to take approximately 30,000 square feet of the existing plaza building. And in order to accommodate that, as Zach mentioned, we're going to have a 1,750 plus or minus square foot addition that needs to go in the northwest corner of the plaza here, out towards 250. And as part of the plaza improvements in that addition, we're also proposing to add quite a bit of curbed islands, landscaping. We're looking to redo the lighting to accommodate the revised traffic patterns. And as part of the overall plaza in working through staying in zoning compliance, we're also adding approximately 3,000 square feet of green space to the project. There's a handout that I gave you guys that's got a green space figure in it. The red on that figure represents additional impervious area or pavements, and then the green is subsequent landscaping improvements or islands that we are proposing that will help channelize traffic, formalize intersections, and break up that parking field within the plaza itself. As another part of the project and something that we worked through, the comments from staff was cross-access. This plaza is kind of the last one to get redeveloped right here on this corner, and the northeast corner of the property has easements from the adjacent property owners that are in place. So as part of this project, we will be completing that cross-access portion and granting an easement for it. And just so you guys are aware, that's right there in the northeast corner. We're also somewhat formalizing and modifying slightly the north-south access drive that'll lead to that point through this area. Right now, you come in adjacent to the Citizens Bank and through this parking field, and then it just kind of splits with multiple access, so this will help to formalize that traffic pattern as well. We didn't want to take the lighting, landscaping, and some of the drainage modifications too far without getting the board's input on this layout. As Zach mentioned, we will be hopefully obtaining final approval for the building addition up in that corner. The remainder of the plaza improvements are to facilitate the tenant's wishes, the owner's wishes to dress up the plaza, and I think that it'll be a large benefit, but those improvements aren't necessarily 100% required by an infill of a building addition in that area. So, and critical to the timeline for both the tenant and the owner is building that building, or at least the shell of it, to allow for quite lengthy facade improvement as well as interior build out. So that's really why we want to focus on obtaining approval for the shell modification or enclosure of that 1,750 square feet. One other item that I wanted to touch on is the number of parking spaces. We did go through an exercise providing calculations based on the ultimate square footage that we would like to build with the future out parcel, and have provided that to town staff and to Zach just to demonstrate that we're still in compliance with the zoning requirements of 5 per thousand for the general retail and other uses, and then the 1 per 150 for the office space that'll be a portion of the medical office within the building. So I think with that justification or the numbers that we've provided, we are in zoning compliance with the parking. We are slightly increasing the green space. We're not getting all the way there, but we're bettering it from the existing condition. And therefore, this board is the only one that we anticipate needing approvals from in order to move the project forward. So with that, I'll turn it over to Michelle to kind of talk through the architecture.
All right, I'm Michelle Trott from Clark Patterson Lee, or CPL now, as we are called. The exterior of the building more is a facelift to the building. Rochester Regional Health will be using the building for a medical office building, combining practices. Zach, I sent you a letter. The existing primary care pediatric practice will move in there. They'll add radiology. They'll shift blood drawing. And the idea is that patients will be able to access all of those areas of need from the center of the building instead of walking outside into to go to blood draw, to go to radiology. Everything will be one-stop shop for them. So with that, they're looking at modernizing the facade. We're looking at painting the brick columns and adding some more brick on the corner. This would be the brown brick that we would add to it. It's more of a red, as you see now. They'll look at adding more of a stone accent at the corner. It's a limestone to brighten up the facade. And then we've been using a rain screen product that will go over the existing. Rochester Regional side will have the little bit of a stratification on it, and the rest of the plaza will have more of just the gray. And Rochester Regionals does alternate this pattern too, just so as you see in the images there. The glazing, most of the part will remain. We will shut down a few of the doors off the front of the Rochester Regional side, just because it is becoming one building. It'll meet exit requirements and code that will be submitted later in the plans. The addition that we're talking about adding, the 1,750 square foot, is right next to the blood bank right now. That area will be renovated into immediate care, as discussed as one of the uses.
Okay. Thank you.
So I think from our standpoint, we're ready for questions that the
Okay.
board may have.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, just a couple questions. So the new addition will be on Route 250 side, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Which is the west side of the present structure,
North and west, yep.
northwest. And so once they merge that whole new building, so that will go to the center of the present structure, the whole Rochester Regional?
Yes, all that corner will be opened up. So, right, this new addition right here. We're going to open up, areas of this. Some of it is a bearing wall, so, it will be open to the interior there. And then they'll relocate the blood bank that's right here at the corner, more interior, so that the entrances are coming off the front of the building.
And the building itself, it's probably similar to other regional health buildings in the county?
Yes, so I don't know if anyone's familiar with the new TOPS renovation at Ridge Goodman Center. It'll look similar to that, not as much as Bay Creek or the Henrietta Rochester Regional, but more like Ridge Goodman Plaza.
Okay. You don't need any variances, correct? Everything's-
That's our understanding, yes. We do not need any variances.
And have you met with our landscaping consultant, or?
We have
Not
not
this part.
provided landscaping detail at this point. That's something that we'll be working through with town staff once, again, the circulation and pattern that we're proposing you guys are comfortable with. We'll be providing additional detail on that.
Okay. And all the other PRC comments you guys are good with?
We've submitted a response letter on that, and
Any
primarily
issues?
the cross-access, we don't have any issues with what has been commented on.
And now this new office building is primarily business hours, not 24/7 type of?
Correct,
Urgent
yes.
care,
It's just
right?
medical office building. So the existing primary care that occupies, I think it's, I don't know, this area right here. I don't know what the A, B, C, or D, which one it is, but that is going to stay for the most part, and it'll stay operational. There's going to be minor integration with that primary care to centralized registration and waiting for patients.
So you won't have urgent care at this location,
There will be urgent care there, yes.
but only during normal business hours?
I do not know the exact hours of urgent care hours, but that will not be opened up to the rest of the facility. It will be this corner.
Okay. Yeah, that's something that we would want to know.
Okay.
I'm good, thank you.
You all set, Chief? Michelle, have you considered softening these brick columns with a column wrap of some type that might minimize the amount of brick?
We can look at that. It was for cost reasons, because of the extensive amount of renovation we're doing into the plaza. That we spent the money on the rain screen.
Okay. If you drive around that
Yeah.
that Route 250, 441 corridor, you'll see some other strip plazas in the area that have made significant improvements in the past 10 years or so, and you'll see some other column wraps that kind of soften the look of the building behind.
Okay. We can look at other options.
Okay.
Can you speak to where you anticipate the main entrances being?
For the Rochester Regional Health component, it's going to be
Yes,
at
yes.
this
That-
corner and this corner. There will be handicap parking along here, and there will be an entrance along here.
So most people will park on the west side and on the south side in between the Sherwin-Williams building and the
Yes.
main building.
There will be employee access from the back And there's a door that's right here roughly.
Okay. If someone parks, let's say they're in the middle, they'd walk down to the end of that landscape curb and across a sidewalk over that?
Correct, so we provide crosswalks at both ends of the parking lot in that area.
Okay. What about on the north side? How do you foresee that being utilized? I see that the red on our plan is new impervious, so that's going to be a drive aisle, say between the post office, east to west?
Yep,
the
so
north?
we've expanded that to provide additional parking, as Michelle mentioned, for employees, which will enter on that north side. Both for Rochester Regional as well as the other tenants
Okay.
would be the thought process. And then that widening allows a fire lane of adequate width at the immediate rear, and then also any type of delivery vehicle, fire trucks, that kind of thing. The turnaround, the exit out is not as critical with the cross access. We don't want to force traffic out through another person's property either. So that does provide enough width in that area to turn around delivery vehicles and emergency vehicles.
Okay. When would you anticipate building this future building on the southeast corner?
I believe a tenant would have to be identified before construction would start, and again, we'd have to come in before this
So
board.
that would be like that's a preliminary overall kind of thing where we get a
Show you
tenant
the
and they say,
master
okay, now we
planning.
want, okay.
Yep.
Okay. How about the green space proposed for that corner niche? That,
Speaking immediately adjacent to that
yeah, right
future
on the
building?
east. No. Speaking to the eastern edge of the Rochester Regional Health portion, where it cuts to the north and then to the east near, no, go east, go to the right, stop, left, down, right there.
Perfect, got it now.
Central
Central.
Florida.
So we're
I mean, I've
proposing-
always thought, I live near this, so I visit this plaza all the time.
Sure.
And I've always thought that that would be a great place to put, it seems like dead space right now.
Yeah, so we are creating some green space in there. The thought is that we'll create a little, not plaza, but an area with a couple benches, potentially a bike rack, some permeable paving type thing, pavers in that area that folks can sit if they wanted to. Depending on future tenants, there's some opportunity there if they wanted to, you know, if a coffee shop goes in or something like that, that would be a possibility. But it won't be anything real formal, but there will be some landscaping feature in there that dresses up that corner a little bit.
And the Rochester Regional Health component basically stops at that vertical line that you have?
Correct.
Is that all vacant space now, or is there taking over some existing?
I'll have Robbie Bishop with the ownership will speak to that.
Hi, Robert Bishop with Compson Development. We had a tenant that just vacated over this past week, and so,
Okay.
and then next to him was the dry cleaner. We've held off on re-tenanting those because we've been working with RGH now for about a year and a half. So this has been a long-term process. So with the expectation that they were going to be expanding, we did not backfill those areas.
Okay, do you anticipate them moving eastbound as,
No.
Okay.
RGH is taken to that line, and then to the right of them, we're tenanted fully all the way to
Right.
the end of the building. CVS is there, they're not going anywhere, they've been there long-term, and most of the tenants are going to stay there. And as Matt was saying, and Michelle was saying, part of our proposal is RGH has asked us to, as part of our lease, to do the facade across the main plaza as well. So the other tenants are very interested in that as well, because it's going to update the entire plaza.
so it'll
not just
have a
the-
similar
Similar.
look and feel?
Yes, sir. Yep.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the board
Yeah,
currently?
I have one more question. And it has to do with the sign marquee. So maybe the owner's representative wants to come back up and share with the board your vision for signage for the rest of the tenants?
Well, I don't think we've gotten that far yet. I don't know that we've really looked at, our intentions have not been to change the marquee currently. Oh, you mean as far as the raceways on the frontage of it?
Yeah, the marquee itself.
Yeah.
So all the other existing tenant signage would be removed,
Yes,
and your new facade goes up?
yes.
And then there's going to be some kind of a consistent theme for tenant signage within the marquee going forward?
Yes, yes, it would be our expectation that we're going to be replacing or reusing the signage that's up there currently. We're just going to, instead of having them on the blank facade that's up there now, they're going to be brought down and then put back up. The material that we're looking to use up there is a material that lends itself very well to being able to redo signage. If we have tenants who move out, we can take down those panels, put new panels up so that you don't see holes in them and so forth. So it's a much better system than what we currently have up there, which is your drive-it or your stucco board.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Okay, I'd like to open this up to the audience. Would anyone from the audience like to speak about this application or have any comments? Nobody. Get on TV. Okay. Any other questions from the board?
I do have one question. Did you mention that there are other Rochester regional practices in the area that would be relocating to this site?
The primary care center will stay. The pediatric practice will move into this building. The
Okay.
immediate care will move into this building. They're going to add radiology, and the blood draw that's there is going to move it more center of the building.
Okay, is there an urgent care that's in?
That's really what immediate care is. There is
Okay.
one in the area, yeah.
Okay, so that would be relocating?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. It's, looks like nice improvements. All right, Zach, please read our third application.
Application number 3, Heritage Christian Services, 275 Kenneth Drive, Suite 100, Rochester, New York, 14623. Request under Chapter 250, Article 12-12.2 and 13-13.2 of the Code of the Town of Penfield for preliminary final site plan and conditional use permit approval for a new child care facility with associated site improvements on a 2.7 acre property located at 2730 Atlantic Avenue. The property is now or formerly owned by Heritage Christian Services Incorporated and zoned R120. Application number 19P-0016, SBL number 124.01-1-2. Welcome back, Matt.
Good evening. Matt Tomlinson from Marathon. With me today, I've got Dan Stewart with Heritage Christian Services, Steve with Architectura, representing the architect, and Amy Dake, who is with SRF, our traffic consultant. So as mentioned, we're proposing to build a daycare at 2730 Atlantic Avenue, which is the northeast corner of Atlantic and Scribner. We've been before this board several times with different renditions of sketch plan, and this latest plan that we've submitted for preliminary final approval on, after receiving several comments from the board as well as performing traffic studies, getting feedback on that, and sundry other steps to get to this point, is consistent with the latest sketch plan. I believe we appeared back in May at a workshop to discuss in detail the traffic study and the feedback received from State DOT and the town's traffic consultant as well in the review of that. So the site plan itself really has not changed. The detail that we've added includes stormwater management facility, addressing town PRC comments on that sketch plan, which includes berming along Scribner near the frontage, additional detail provided for landscaping and enclosures before the board today. We've also brought copies of the colored rendering some cuts on the playground equipment that's anticipated, which I believe the board had asked to see. And I just wanted to touch on a couple of things. We do need several variances related to the size of the building. As the board knows, there's limits to size of daycares within the zoning code, so we're proposing to exceed that. This building be approximately 11,500 square feet. We also are adjacent to residential areas, although the area north of us is a school and the area east of us is a church, so there aren't any residences immediately adjacent, but we are still adjacent to that zoning. So I just wanted to briefly touch on the site plan because I know the board's familiar with it and I can answer any questions that the board may have regarding that, but I did want to introduce Dan Stewart to talk about the size, the number of kids, the programming a little bit, and then Steve will touch on the architecture.
Okay. Hi, my name's Dan Stewart. I'm with Heritage Christian Services. This will be a child care center. Heritage currently operates 3 other child care centers in Rochester. Children age 6 weeks up to 12 years. Typical hours of operation will be 6 a.m. To 6 p.m., Monday through Friday. Limited use of the building for nights and weekends. Staffing, typically there will be 31 teachers and support staff. 135 students is what's anticipated for this program. Going back to the size of the building a little bit, a lot of that's driven by the number of teachers to students, then square footage for students in the classroom. What we do a lot of times is we make the classrooms universal so that if we have an extra infant class, we're able to use another classroom to convert that until we get enough to satisfy the requirements for the older age kids. So a lot of that drives back to the size of the building. And then along with the building also, we will have a kitchen in there. We will not prepare food for lunches. It will be brought in, but it'll be a warming kitchen. It will have the 3 basins, meet all the code requirements needed for the child care. There will be a staff lounge. There will be a nursing mother's room, therapy room, a studio, family room on each wing of the building. The way it's set up more or less is we've got 2 classrooms for each age groups. You'll enter the center and then it'll be left and right for each age group. And just trying to keep continuity of care with the groups there so that they move in that separate little pod, left or right. There will be mechanical rooms, reception hallway area. Outdoor play areas will be divided, as Matt shows here, with fencing, depending on your age group in the classroom that you're involved in. I'll let Matt go back into a little bit more of access into the site. We have, over the years, we have been looking for a number of different properties in the Penfield area, knowing that the need here in Penfield to develop a child care, it's a needed, and we have gone through the Child Care Council to get their feedback on that. We have looked at some different opportunities in and around Penfield. This seems to be the best opportunity with the sanitary sewer, all the utilities that we need there, and in on a major route in into the city. So at that point, we'll turn it over to Matt.
So from an access standpoint, as I mentioned, we have provided turning movements both for emergency vehicles and school buses to the site, to the town, as part of previous submittal packages. And we have received a letter from State DOT agreeing with the location of the drive onto Atlantic Avenue as far as maximizing separation. We're within a couple of feet of our property line on the east there in order to maximize the distance to the signalized intersection, which would allow when shorter queuing is there for it to move out. And if there's specific questions further on the traffic, Amy, I'm sure, can answer those. I'd like to have Steve comment on the building now briefly and show you some samples.
Good evening. Steve Takich with Architectura. I'd like to let you know that most of the materials we selected, we just took cues from the existing farmhouse. So basically, it's a horizontal shiplap siding. The garage has some board and batten. A lot of the windows we were using are just double hung with the muttons on the top sash. And there are some shutters we're showing that we're picking up off the house as well. It's a classic farmhouse kind of style, so it's a vernacular that fits to the area. It's not obtrusive. It's kind of blends well. The color is going to be a warm gray palette with the warm gray asphalt shingles. And we have one color door at the entrance feature. The column door is basic porch columns with nice little details on it. Any other architectural vernacular we picked up off of what we saw in the neighborhood. Just some little details here and there. Nothing too flashy. Keeping it downplayed. We're showing some stone on the main entrance columns. That's going to be a gray veneer type of stone. I'd like to show you a sample of that. So this is the stone we're going to present. It'll be wrapped. It's just like 2.5 inches thick. Goes around a masonry pier, and that's all that is. Something simple. The shingles I wanted to share with, or the shutters I wanted to share. I just think these samples are adorable. They go, here's a sample. All right, give me a sample. So if you'd like to see a black sample of the shutters, they're right here. They're bigger, though. These only small.
The actual ones.
The rest of it's just regular vinyl siding, gray in color. Excuse me, same for the soffit. It'd be like a beadboard soffit. It's all white. Probably be some exterior lighting out there at the doors, exit lights, and some recessed in the overhangs for the porches. And with that, I'll entertain any questions.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I just wanted to mention we have responded in writing to comment letters received from town staff. One of the items that I did want to mention, child safety is obviously paramount with an operation like this. So there was 2 comments in there that I just briefly wanted to touch base with the board on. Number 1 being areas where there is not a significant buffer to the play area from the parking. There is a curb there and not really any directed traffic, but we're proposing that we would have a specialized fence post in there, essentially a bollard, concrete and steel, that the fence would be mounted to, just to provide an extra level of safety, as there isn't a barrier there. And then along the face over here, we'd propose to extend the landscaping that is on the site plans around that corner to provide more of a visual barrier than just the fences for folks in that area. And then
Matt, would there be a curb or a wheel stop on that side as well?
yes, so the entirety of the pavement adjacent to the building is curbed. That's correct. And then anywhere that there is ADA parking, those signs where the curb is dropped, the signposts themselves would be inset in bollards as well to keep any vehicles from moving through the flush curb areas.
Okay.
So I think with that, we can answer any questions that the board might have.
Okay, thank you. Jim, do you want to start off?
Yeah, so, you know, the general topic of greatest interest with this project has been and continues to be traffic. So, you know, we've read the traffic study, and we understand that the study determined that there were enough gaps. And for those of you that don't know what that is, it's a timing gap, so that there's a little bit of a let up in traffic from one direction or another that allows traffic to flow through. And we've all seen that at an intersection. So I think it would be worthwhile for the board and the audience to maybe hear just a executive summary from your traffic consultant while we're here.
Sure. Come on up, Amy.
Good evening. My name is Amy Dake. I'm the Senior Managing Traffic Engineer with SRF Associates. Just to give you basically a high-level overview of the traffic study. First thing we did was look at existing traffic volumes. We went out and actually counted the traffic during the morning and the evening peak hours. We captured the afternoon school peak hour as well. So we look at the time periods when the commuter traffic is the highest and determine what that 1 hour time period is and then analyze that. We did our counts when school was in session because we know we're right adjacent to the elementary and middle schools right there. So those time periods were determined to be 7:15 to 8:15 in the morning and 4:30 to 5:30 at night. So the evening peak time is when the commuter traffic is the highest, and it happens to occur after school traffic has let out for the day. And that's when the majority of parents are picking up children from the daycare center. The next step in a traffic analysis is to look at any background traffic. So as we know, we have to go through the process with the town, and this takes time, and it takes time for the construction to happen of the building. So we're looking at a year away. So in that time period, there's other development in the area that can occur. So we took into account the Windsor Ridge subdivision, which was under construction at the time that we did the traffic counts, and then we added some growth as well to account for that. And then what we do is we add traffic related to the proposed development. So we know that we have a daycare center, and this particular user has other daycare centers in the area, which makes it very easy to get very good information on how much traffic that development is going to actually generate at this site. So,
Let me just stop you for a
yes.
minute, Amy. The other facilities that the applicant has, are they of the same size in terms of square footage and in terms of number of students as the proposed project?
They're very similar. The facility in Greece that we used has 120 children, and this one is proposed to have 130. So what we do is we take the actual information from those uses and then project out for the greater number of children at this use.
Okay.
Okay.
And
So we added...
Let me just
Yep, go ahead.
interject again, if I may. So there's two large mixed-use developments currently under consideration by the town that could utilize this artery as a means of getting to and from areas west of town, and may also use the facility. Were those projects and the anticipated traffic from those projects considered?
So this traffic study was done in June of 2018, so a little over a year ago now. And as I mentioned, it included Windsor Ridge, and it includes a growth rate to account for developments such as this. The standard procedure when you do a traffic impact study is to include anything that is approved or under construction at the time that you do your traffic study. So the fact that those are under consideration by the town, they would not, even if we were doing the traffic study right now, they're not currently approved, they wouldn't have been included. So the answer is no, they're not included in this study.
Okay.
So continuing on, we took into account the traffic generated by the actual daycare facility, and we also took into account school buses that would be entering and exiting this site to pick up the students. Through talking with the school district, we understand that there's a maximum of 3 school buses that would enter and exit this site to pick up students and drop them off. So moving on, the next step is to actually evaluate the intersection. So we looked at the signalized intersection, of course, and what we do is we do what's called a capacity analysis. So that looks at delays of traffic through the intersection and queuing and how the traffic travels through the intersection, and it comes up with a letter grade for the intersection. And those letters are A through F. A being the least amount of delay and F being the greatest amount of delay. So we analyze the existing conditions. We then analyze the background condition, which is the growth and the other development in the area. So that's a condition that would occur whether or not this development went forward or not. And then we look at a full build-out condition once we add this development in. And we compare those 3 conditions. And what we found is that even adding the background traffic and this development, there's no change in level of service at the intersection. So those letter grades don't change. That's typically what's included in a traffic impact study. Sometimes when we have developments on roadways that have higher traffic volumes, such as Atlantic, we go a step further. So in this case, we did 2 additional studies as part of the traffic impact study. We looked at gaps in traffic at the proposed driveway location on Atlantic, and we looked at the existing queuing conditions southbound on Scribner, because we wanted to see how often the proposed driveway on Scribner would be blocked. So the results of the gap study showed that there are sufficient gaps in the traffic on Atlantic to accommodate the traffic that would be exiting that driveway. The southbound queues on Scribner are highest in the morning peak when the peak hour coincides with the school peak. And we did find that there's about a 20-minute period when that driveway is blocked intermittently by the southbound traffic on Scribner. Now, that's mostly the through and right turn traffic on Scribner that's blocking that, not left turn traffic. So what happens is every time the traffic signal changes, that queue clears, and then there's an opportunity for traffic to exit the proposed driveway. In the evening peak, it was very infrequent that the driveway would be blocked by the southbound queues, because we're after the school peak at that point. The other thing I wanted to mention is that the traffic study has been reviewed and approved by both the New York State DOT, who has jurisdiction over Atlantic Avenue, as well as your third-party traffic engineering consultant, who agreed with the traffic study. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to, that's kind of a high-level overview.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thanks. Any other questions? Overall? Yep. You do?
No, I'm all set.
Questions?
Yeah, Matt, maybe you can just go into the variances, talk a little about the variances that you're going to need.
Sure. So I mentioned the size of the building. And let me just turn to that page in my plans. So 8,000 square feet is the maximum size allowed by code. We're proposing 11,500. So that's one variance. Minimum lot area is also a requirement in the code, 5 acres for a daycare use. We have 2.7 acres on the current parcel, so we're asking for relief from that. Buffer to adjacent residential property line. I mentioned that we are adjacent to the residential zoning, although there aren't residences immediately to our north and to our east. The buffer being measured to the play area being the fence, we're insetting that 1 foot inside the property line. So where 100's required, we're requesting that to be reduced to 1 foot. The garage is within the rear yard setback. The building's oriented to Atlantic. It's kind of a wide and shallow lot, so we're asking relief to, I believe it's 26 feet from where 30 feet is required. And then the accessory structure, and this is one that we anticipate some discussion with the zoning board next week on. The hiding places in play areas are not encouraged, and Heritage Christian has great interest in not having this shed be pulled away from that fence and allowing kind of pockets where kids can gather and cause mayhem. So we are requesting that that shed be placed 1 foot from the property line. Understand that that is quite a reduction from the town's standpoint, but again, safety of the kids and visibility of them is preferred. So we are requesting it. If the zoning board determines that they are not willing to grant that variance, we'll have to come up with an alternate location for it.
Would you consider eliminating the shed and making the garage bigger to accommodate the equipment that would be stored in the shed?
I'll let Dan speak to that one.
The objective of this shed here is to have playground equipment so that this area, and this area can utilize it. If needed, if we've got to move it down here, we can. It's just a matter of, like we said, having a pocket where somebody might be able to, line of sight is
Can you describe the equipment you're referring to?
It's typically bicycles, yard games, balls, you name it, in the shed.
picked up and put away every
Right.
day type of thing, moved in and out.
Okay.
Dan, you mentioned several other locations you looked at in Penfield prior
Yes.
to this?
As far as property, Terry, yes, we have looked at a number of locations. I can give you the full list if you'd like.
No, not a full list, maybe just a couple, I mean, in the area of where you are right now?
We've looked at the property across from the childcare over on 250. The space didn't allow for it. A lot of stuff, as soon as you get outside of here, sanitary sewer becomes an issue. Salt Road, up and down 250, same thing, sanitary sewer becomes an issue with it. Size of lots also, and the stuff that is 5 acres on a route seemed to be our best option.
Now, when you chose this location, I mean, you had to know that you're going to need variances, correct?
Correct.
And you purchased it anyways?
Yes.
Okay. Now, my other question is, most of your other places, that I've gone by them both, they seem to be in commercial, pretty much commercial areas, not residential.
Henrietta, yes, I would agree. Stone Road is right on the cusp.
It's on the cusp, okay.
I would say it's more residential than, it's similar, my opinion, Terry, to this, with the school, the church, the quarry, and the open space.
And
Yeah.
Stone Road, we did the engineering for that one as well. That has residences immediately behind it on the other side of the creek, and then also across the road with fire station and plaza kind of bracketing that. So
Right.
it's a mix of uses similar to this.
Yeah, I consider it more commercial, and then Webster, I went over there today, I consider that commercial. You agree with me on May Street, back in Kirchner Park?
Parts of it, but absolutely there is residential that does abut the property.
Yeah, and my concern today was, I'll let you know, when I went over there, I saw that, I think the shed or whatever you're referring to, is that the one with the garage that we're going to store in front of your place?
What side
In
are you-
Webster? They had a garage up front with a garage, is that where you store equipment, I assume?
The shed out in front that has more snow blowers and
Oh, okay.
that type of equipment. We purchased that property 3 years ago now. It was there when we took over the property.
So you own both those buildings in Webster,
Yes,
main building?
yes.
You know what, I noticed today, there's like a driveway, a roadway that goes around the front of the building, around the side. I don't know where it goes, because I couldn't drive there.
On the
In
north
the
side?
parking lot, it's on the south side, the main entrance to the
Yes.
daycare. Where's that road go?
It's just a loop in the back.
Okay. Because they had orange cones out there.
Yep.
I couldn't drive there. They had orange cones, and the kids were out there playing, which I considered a street. And that raised some concerns, like, okay, if you run out of space, like we might do here in the playground, we're not going to be throwing orange cones up.
We have checked with the fire marshal, and that loop in the back, he does not need it for egress. And we were going to make it into a bike loop and separate it off from the front parking lot. But at this point, we have not. But yes, we have checked with the fire marshal, and he was okay with the kids playing in that area.
And from a space standpoint, the play areas here are more than sufficient for the number of kids that we're going to have. That was an existing facility.
It's an existing facility with 220 children up there.
Okay.
That's substantially larger than what we have here.
Okay, so that's like the overflow?
No, I wouldn't say it's overflow. As far as where the kids were playing on the hard surface, on the bike loop, they probably had bikes back there on asphalt, supervised by the teachers.
Okay. Alrighty, my other question now, for this, we're gonna have, we got 135 students, 31 teachers plus staff, right? So that'll, for parking, right, you're gonna need a variance for that, correct, for parking?
I don't believe that's on our list of variances that are required.
So you're gonna have enough parking for
We
30?
have, yeah, there's 45 required by code, we're providing 53. So that allows, with 31 staff, that allows 22 available for pickups, drop-offs, that kind of thing, and those are staggered quite frequently throughout the peak hour for pickup and drop-off.
The 135 students are staggered enough that you'll have enough with 31 teachers and staff parking there, correct?
Correct.
Yes, same thing with the 31 teachers that's total in there, Terry, so they start out in the morning and then there's shift changes and what have you, so not all 31 teachers are there at 6 o'clock in the morning.
Okay. And there, now the buses, I noticed the buses, how many buses you gonna have at this location?
We will
Your
not
personal.
have, we will not, we may have a 10-passenger
Right.
van
Right.
to transport, but we will not have a bus at this location.
Okay, well, 10, that's what I'm referring to, because every other location does have them. There was 2 out in Greece the day I was out there, and you actually had 3 in Webster today. The new one, and you had 1 around the back, and then 1 was leaving. There's 3. So I just want to know
Well,
how many,
let me
and if they
clarify.
stay there, right?
Let me clarify.
Yeah, okay.
In Greece, in Webster, there's also a day program for Heritage Christian that is operated out of the back. So what you're referring to is one of the buses, which I'm assuming is white, is for the day program.
Okay.
There is only one, and that is the only location that we have a commercial bus, if you will, smaller 15-passenger bus is at that location. The Henrietta and Greece location is more of a 10-passenger van.
So we'll only have 1 at this location too, if this is approved, correct? And it stays there, you leave those there, right?
Yes.
The overnight or whatever?
Yes.
Just use them during the day. Okay, what about like, for traffic? Okay, they're gonna come in Atlantic Avenue and go out to Scribner Road, you know, peak hours. What if they get backed up? So now they get backed up, you know, queue back into your area, your lot. They can't get out in either direction. How many cars do you think can back up there before they can exit the location at these peak hours that you speak of?
From a queuing standpoint, internal to the site?
Yes.
So we could stack at least 6 vehicles in this driveway prior to it getting into the parking lot at all. And then this driveway for exiting, you know, this is a normal travel lane, if you will, 2-way. And so, you know, stacking would not block any, we're only parking on one side, so stacking back through that area would not significantly block any.
For up to 20 minutes,
Parking.
because I think 20 minutes, Amy mentioned, like if there's a backup, you could handle that queue back into the interior.
Yeah, I'll let Amy talk to that a little bit.
There's plenty of room on site for the queuing that you're talking about. We don't anticipate a significant volume of queuing because, as they mentioned, it's very staggered as to how the parents are picking up and dropping off. So, for example, in the morning peak, when we're having the issue with the queuing, we only anticipate 33 vehicles exiting the site during that peak hour. That's for a whole hour. And we're talking about a potential problem during a 20-minute period. So if the driveway on Scribner is blocked, you have the opportunity to use the driveway on Atlantic instead. So we really don't anticipate any significant queuing for traffic exiting the site in that respect.
If there was an emergency, Amy, of some sort, fire, ambulance needed, that wouldn't pose a problem, you think, getting in the location?
No, not at all. And I mean, typically, whenever you have an emergency vehicle with their sirens on, lights on, people move over, they move out of the way, they do whatever they can to allow the emergency vehicle to get through.
Now, another question, as long as you're there, the day they were doing the study, was it June you mentioned? I understand during the sketch phase of this, we were reviewing, one of the residents down there, I believe, stated he told the person to leave.
Yeah, it was one of my technicians. He said that a resident did come out and speak to him. It happened to occur at the very end of the time period that we were collecting data, so it didn't affect any of the data collection at all.
Okay, so he was complete. He didn't have to come back again and redo
No.
it?
No.
I noticed when I was reading your report, it didn't I didn't see anything where they indicate the number of school buses that come out. Well, I live down there, so I know, I'm aware of what's going on down there. The number of school buses, when they stack up out in front, which will be your exit.
Yep.
So on the Scribner Road, they block it all. I mean, they
Yeah.
block that whole corner right down to the school, actually.
So I don't have the actual number of school buses to tell you at the tip of my finger on Scribner, that's what you're talking about. The queue analysis did take that into account. It counted all of the school buses and regular vehicles that were in that queue, and all of our counts counted school buses as well as other trucks.
It didn't indicate that, though, on the study, correct? I didn't see it.
What do you mean?
It didn't say school buses that I'm aware of.
Yeah, it may
It-
not say it specifically, but it is included.
Wow.
Yeah. So the distance, it shows, yeah, it's labeled as number of cars, but it's really a mixture of cars and buses.
Yeah. That might be an issue, I think, because, I don't know, I looked at some of the numbers for the cars, and like I say, me driving down there, it's like, wow. I was hoping that you just say that, they weren't included in there because the number of school buses, but you might have to take a look at that one again, but, because I
They
think.
are included.
Yeah, they just
Yeah.
didn't, for my travels down there, just didn't, it seemed like there were, if you added the cars, which are a lot of cars, numbers, and I think you, like, a couple of times, they had like 10 or 11 with the school buses. I mean, it would definitely be more than that during those peak hours, not you, whoever you had down there. There might be a little question about the accuracy of that, if the school buses, you know what I mean?
Well, the buses are included.
The buses are
Yeah.
included.
Yeah.
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 The queuing stack depth included
when the Yeah.
buses were there, and that probably is proportion with a 20-minute issue is probably when those
Right,
buses are coming
exactly.
out and that queue length is extended.
And then, just looking over our engineer, or our consultant, Terry Rice, wrote this report, which you made reference to. And although it wasn't a bad report, but I noticed in it, it said traffic queuing on Scribner Road will result in difficulty for the traffic turning left from the proposed driveway. Overall, the adjacent roadway network can accommodate the traffic from this but he indicates there will be a problem making a left on Scribner Road.
Yeah,
If I read it, okay.
during the time period in the morning,
Right.
when that driveway is blocked by the
Right.
southbound traffic, it
Right.
will be difficult to make that left turn. But the drivers would then have an opportunity to use the driveway on Atlantic instead. And the really great thing about this type of a project being a daycare center is that it's the same people coming to the site day in and day out. It's the parents. So they'll learn very quickly, number one, if it's blocked at 10 after 8 in the morning, maybe I should get there 10 minutes earlier or 10 minutes later. Or I'll use the Atlantic driveway instead of Scribner.
I just would like to point out
Wait a minute.
if you're exiting on the
Matt,
Scribner.
just try to grab the
Yes.
microphone.
Sorry.
So for that intersection, if you're taking a left out of that driveway, you're trying to head south on Scribner or west on Atlantic. So both of those movements are much simpler coming out of the Atlantic. I would anticipate the majority of traffic going north on Scribner out of that driveway in the mornings just to avoid that situation, because if you take a right out of this driveway, which will be much easier, you can then continue west, or you can take a left protected at the traffic light versus trying to get across Scribner. So as Amy mentioned, the parents are going to learn that very quickly and accommodate.
It's unfortunate, though, like, in my experience down there, when traffic backs up on Scribner, and I'm coming southbound on Scribner, we have to stop to let the buses out, because they have to go southbound also. So if somebody wants to go in that direction, it's gonna back up more. They're not gonna make a right-hand turn if they have to go to work. After they drop their kids off, they wanna make a left on the Scribner, exiting there, because they wanna get back out and make a right. And they're not gonna turn around in the interior, come back out to make the right on Atlantic Avenue.
Dan can confirm this, but they don't just pull up and let the kid go. I believe the parent physically has to walk
They
their
have to-
child in, so they're
exactly.
parking and backing out, going in either direction. So they will be turning around per se every time that they drop or pick up their kid.
Yeah, and to your point, you're absolutely right. If you pull up and you're waiting to make a left turn and it's blocked, you're going to wait to make your left turn. You're going to do that once. And then the next day when you come and you see that the queue is there again, you're going to go to Atlantic instead.
But I think there's danger also if they turn around now in the interior, they come back out to Atlantic. You don't want to, if that traffic is busy, if you've ever been there, you're not going to try to, like somebody stop going westbound. You're not going to be one that person like go ahead, giving you the okay to pull out of there onto Atlantic Avenue to make a left because somebody will be coming down the other direction and it could be a bad accident. I mean, safety, if you don't go right onto Atlantic Avenue, I think it's going to be a dangerous situation on Atlantic Avenue.
Right, right. In the morning, the majority of the traffic is heading towards the city, both on Atlantic and the parents, because they're going to work. So the majority of them will be trying to turn right onto Atlantic. You may get more traffic trying to turn left onto Atlantic in the evening, but in the evening, it's not as much of a problem. And that's why we did the gap study, to show that there are those gaps available, that traffic can safely exit that driveway.
Okay. And then Mr. Royce's report also mentions that the levels of service for all movements and approaches except the Wayland Road northbound left turn in the AM peak hours is dangerous. And then the closeness of the schools and the morning drop-off activity combined with school buses exiting the Bay Trail School parking lot where they are staging results in heavy southbound flow of traffic for a period of time which will queue past the proposed Scribner Road site driveway for about 20-minute period during the AM peak hour. So he does mention those. And then it says the last paragraph, 20 minutes of congestion in the morning, have a choice and could choose to exit the site using the Atlantic Avenue driveway. So at least he does mention the danger zones down there, I think, for traffic. The main thing, the variances, for anybody who wants to attend it, it's going to be, you're in front of zoning August 15th.
That's correct.
For those variances, which you'll have to
Correct, yep.
deal with that situation. All right, I'll take a break and let somebody else ask some questions, I guess. Anybody else got any?
Yeah, I have a question. Could you summarize the stormwater management on that site? I know before when it was reviewed and sketched, there were, a lot of the engineering hadn't been completed.
Sure. So we're proposing it's called a micropool extended detention stormwater management facility. It complies with all the DEC requirements for stormwater. We're also proposing 2 bioretention areas, which will be landscaped. Those treat the initial runoff for quality, and then the water gets conveyed into the stormwater management facility to attenuate the flows to meet the requirements of matching the existing outflow. Currently, the site drains down through a swale right in the middle here to an end section that goes into the state DOT system. So we would be basically mimicking existing conditions with our discharges. We have made application to the state DOT for the driveway permit, for a utility permit for the water service, and also they'll review the SWIP so that they concur with Mr. Valentine and the engineering staff on our drainage pattern. So this pond will have standing water similar to the school's property. I mean, it'll be very similar to how their pond functions in outlets. In rain events, the water level will go up. It'll be attenuated and discharged essentially over a 24-hour period, and then it'll return to the static level of the pond.
How deep will that be on a regular basis?
Regular basis, there's a shelving aquatic bench for safety, about 10 to 12 feet wide, immediately at the toe of the slope. And then the deep pools for water quality be approximately 4 feet deep, essentially at all times.
Will, in that deep area, generally, what's the pitch?
The pitch is generally a 1-on-3. So in pond design by the DEC, you're required to meet a minimum or a maximum slope of the slopes above the water. That's a 1-on-4, easily mowable. It's called a recoverable slope. It matches a lot of shoulders along state DOT roads. They're safe enough for a vehicle to get onto it and then get off of it. Then the aquatic bench that I mentioned, that varies from 10 to 12 feet wide. So somebody God forbid, trips and falls down that slope, they're in less than a foot of water on that bench area, even when they get to the water. So the deep portion is even inboard of that flatter area within the pond itself.
Okay. Yeah, I think, yeah, on the topo, I can see where that deep.
On the grading plan, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Regarding landscaping, what's the landscaping, the trees removal to accommodate if you are able to get all these variances? How many trees are gonna retain, get rid of?
We're essentially removing all the trees and then planting new coming back.
Have you
the
spoke
site.
with our consultant on that?
Yeah, his comments were included in our response to the letter.
All right, and you were provided this email from a resident of Scribner Road. You haven't seen that yet? They haven't seen
Have
that?
not seen that, no.
By Ms. Fulton. Okay, I'm sure Zach will provide you with that. Comments about their thoughts on the application, and I think that's it for now for me. Thanks.
Jim, did you have another question? Okay. Anyone in the audience like to comment on this application? Yes, come on up, please. Yeah, come on up, and if you could give us your name and address and address your questions to the board. And
Sure. My name is Ashley Schultz. I live at 1755 Scribner Road. My other question was the facilities that are a comparable size of students, how many acres of land are they on?
That's a good question. We can get that information.
Stone Road's approximately 1.8 acres, and Henrietta, 1.47 for the Henrietta parcel.
Okay, so.
Slightly smaller. We're 2.7, I believe, for this parcel.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Any other comments from the board?
Good, thanks.
Nope. Okay. Thank you very much for your presentation. And did you have something to say?
We'll be back after the zoning board, see how that goes.
Okay.
Thank you.
And we can move on to the next agenda item.
Application number 4, Combat Construction Incorporated, 40 Lake Road, Webster, New York, 14580. Requests under Chapter 250, Articles 11-11.2 and 12-12.2 for preliminary overall subdivision and site plan approval under Town Law 278 for a 72-lot single-family residential cluster subdivision with associated site improvements on a 90.5 acre property located at 1394 and 1440 Jackson Road, to be known as Forest Ridge Estates subdivision. Property is now or formerly owned by Lupo Brothers Family Trust, Prindenoff Family Trust, Kazanich Family Trust, Peter Rubino, G. DiPisa, and Santa Puccio, don't know if I said that right, and zoned RR1. Application number 19P-0019, SBL numbers 095.03-1-39 and 110.01-1-4. Matt, you're back.
Good evening.
Man,
Matt
you just won't
Tomlinson
go away
from
tonight, will you?
Sorry. I did have to take a drink of water that time. I've got Mike D'Amico with Combat Construction with me as well, who will be the developer of the site. So, as the board knows, we were here several times for a sketch plan discussion to establish density. We're proposing a cluster development, and as Zach mentioned, we're at Jackson and Plank Roads, approximately 91 acres. And where we landed with the density, with the board's input on essentially developable lots under the existing zoning, was a total of 72 lots. If the board remembers, there is some wetland on the site, which has been delineated by our wetland consultant and a report prepared on that. And we're proposing 71 of the lots to be clustered with one, I call it estate lot, in the corner up here at Jackson and Plank. It totals approximately 22 acres. It's the remnant of the Lupo piece up here. We are proposing to extend off-site sanitary sewer. This will be a low-pressure force main system with individual pump stations. Sure.
I hate to break your cadence, but could you refresh the board's memory? How many lots did we start out with?
We started out between 77 and 78, I believe. Then we went through a couple renditions, got down to 75. And then through discussion on the stormwater management, that was reduced to the 72 that we landed on with the board.
And is the developer still considering building basements?
Yes, it would be basements in all lots.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay, sure. And I know what your follow-up question is for that, so I'll touch on that one as we go. So from some of the benefits of the clustering, as the board knows, and where we landed with the sketch plan, which this plan is consistent with what you previously saw, we're maintaining some significant buffering to our neighbors. The neighbors are relatively limited as far as number. There are several right in this area along Jackson Road, and as you can see, we're staying a couple of 100 feet away at least to the lots, let alone the residences. We will be requesting a sidewalk waiver. We're proposing to put sidewalk internal to the subdivision along one side of the street, so we'll work with town staff on that. Portion of that reason is there are no other sidewalks along the streets in this area. One of the other things is it maintains quite a bit of buffering the topography and vegetation along the road to create sidewalk along the perimeter of the site. Doesn't really lend itself to that working well with roadside swales. There's a transmission line that the Water Authority owns along Jackson Road that cuts through our property as well, which would preclude any large grade changes through that area. So that's some of the reasons that we will be pursuing that waiver. We have received preliminary comments from town engineering, town staff, Monroe County DOT, who owns and maintains Plank Road, which is County Road 11. Our off-site sanitary sewer is going to be running to the west down Plank Road along the south side. And so we wanted to get their comments sooner rather than later to talk about that off-site sewer routing. They don't have any major concerns, mostly technical, and we'll be working through that with them as well. Through the sketch plan process, there were several concerns with drainage, with bedrock evidence that we found out there in some preliminary test pits, primarily along this area at the back, which we are avoiding with our current layout, showed bedrock evidence, very shallow depths, a couple feet, 4 feet, that kind of thing. And so what we did is once we established this layout through the sketch plan process, we staked out along the center line of the road and several of the house pads, and Mike went out and dug a multitude of test pits to determine bedrock elevations, and I'm going to spend a little bit of time on that in a minute. But as far as groundwater, evidence of mineral deposits from seasonal groundwater through the development area, no groundwater was encountered other than right up where our road is going, and we're keeping the basements out of that area. That area is relatively low on the backside of the roadway through that area, and we'll be filling quite a bit in there. So I'll come back to that briefly. In moving this project forward, we wanted to provide, obviously, a preliminary overall set that gave quite a bit of additional detail to the town and the town staff to support our request for approvals. We have not fully determined phasing, which is why we did not also submit for a final phase 1 with this application. There's talks about potentially doing it in 2 phases, possibly all in 1 phase, depending on the demand as we get closer. We anticipate starting construction as early as we can next spring, and that will really dictate the timing of it when the model gets up so that sales can go and that kind of thing. So as we work through the process with the town and advance these plans to a final application, we'll start to nail down that phasing question for the board. I did want to talk a little bit more about the bedrock and the groundwater, and then I'll open it up to questions from the board. So I used my fancy highlighters that I have at my office and added some color to this just so I can point to it while I'm talking to the board about it. But we dug test pits approximately every 100 to 150 feet through the site and then spurred off to several of the house pad locations. So the orange on the sheet represents the bedrock elevations identified on those test pits throughout the buildable area that we're developing.
Can you just help us out and tell us where those cross sections are?
Sure.
So on the
this
top
is a
part is that west, south, east?
Sure. This is the Jackson Road intersection here at the upper left hand, and then this profile follows the center line of the road all the way along it. So over here is just where the end of the last house pads are at this end. So it's following the road in this direction all the way through the development. Okay. So the orange is bedrock elevations that we have identified through this area. The green is the existing grade along that same path, okay? So as you can see in this area, when the orange and green get closer together, that's shallower bedrock. This was about 5 feet deep through this area, and that's stationed roughly 2,200 to 2,800 along the roadway, which is right in this area right here. The remainder of the site is primarily about 8 feet deep and roughly following the existing grade with the bedrock elevation as well. The pink highlighter is our proposed grade. So you can see in areas where we were closer to bedrock, right up here at the start, and where that wet, very wet area is, and close to the neighbors that we heard who have some sump pump and drainage issues, as you would expect at those elevations, if their basements are similar to that, they're probably picking up a lot of groundwater sitting on that bedrock elevation. So what we're proposing in our low areas is picking up the corridor through the roadway and to the fronts of the houses and filling those areas to ensure that our basements are being set above that bedrock elevation or right on that bedrock elevation to eliminate some of the bathtub effect that you can get if that basement is set down in the bedrock area. And so that represents quite a bit of earthwork. So some of what we've done is the rears of these houses will be daylighted so that there'll be higher level windows in those basement areas and reduce the amount of fill that would be required for the backyard specifically. So the pink really in all cases is a minimum of 8 feet above the bedrock elevation, again, in order to set those basements up high enough that we're not going to have groundwater issues related to the bedrock and water migrating along the bedrock. We did not find evidence of minerals or perched water table above the bedrock elevation, so that leads us to believe that the groundwater that's out here is really primarily following the bedrock itself. So with that, we understand that we'll be on the September agenda. There's a couple of items specific to rear yard drainage and some other items that before we submitted revised plans, we wanted to sit down with Mr. Valentine and his engineering staff and kind of talk through a couple of those items. Some of it pertained to the stormwater management facilities and how they're going to access that on the lands to be dedicated to the town. And other pieces of it included some just technical drainage items that we want to make sure we have nailed down before we move too much further with the plans on it. That being said, again, we have submitted for preliminary approval. I know some of these details will be or would typically be in the final plan set, and so we anticipate working through those and understand that work is not going to start out here until the final plans are approved by this board. Now I'm ready for more questions.
Okay. Bob, you want to start
Yeah.
off?
When the deep hole tests or the deep holes that you referenced, when were those done calendar-wise?
We did those almost 2 weeks after we appeared before this board with the final sketch plan. So that was May 15th, May 20th, somewhere in that neighborhood,
Okay.
right in the nice wet part of our spring.
the poured floor that is basement to bedrock, what would you say the minimum?
The minimum will be right on bedrock. The maximum will probably be a foot, maybe 2 feet above it.
Okay, because my next question is if that was the case for foundation drainage and sump pumps, how would that be accomplished to get below the poured floor?
So either that, obviously that would be jackhammered out. No blasting for basements is a requirement of Penfield, but we don't anticipate really having to have much in the way of foundation drainage other than a footer drain to the sump pump. And that would be essentially at the top of footer. So that slab elevation and top of footer is going to be, within a few inches of each other there. So I should revise that to say top of footer essentially will be at bedrock. The slab will be slightly above it.
Okay. With the sewer system being a forced main, can you describe for a homeowner that's living there what they would expect? Is there any monitoring of the pumping system? What happens when it fails? If you could kind of describe that.
Sure. So similar to a lot of houses along the Finger Lakes, my in-laws have a place on an E1 pump system, so I'm very familiar with them. It's a small diameter pump station, sits outside the house. Every pump is individually owned and maintained. So there'll be a service contract, essentially, just like a roto-rooter, or if you had an issue with a gravity drain. So for their expectation, every single pump station has an alarm panel with a light and horn that just beeps like if you leave your fridge open, slightly louder than that, but and there's a strobe on it that flashes if there's an issue. And so that alarm panel typically would be mounted on the side of your house, similar to a gas meter or an electric meter that would be visible and able to know if there's an issue right away. And that is with the pump itself. So anything, a pump doesn't kick on, there's alarm floats that set off that light to let you know if there's an issue, if it's overfilling or not kicking on properly.
Okay, so where that pump resides, there's a small tank of some sort that the floats then, once it gets to a certain level, it cycles on and off.
That's
right?
correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
Took all my questions.
Who took them? Bob took them?
Sorry.
We're good.
Thomas questions?
We're good.
I'm done.
Can you tell me the average size of the lots?
Average size of the lots, the minimum
Smallest,
size,
biggest?
16,000 square feet was the typical size, 80 by 200. And that's
Okay.
consistent with the cluster request that we made previously. Through the sketch plan process and some of the initial comments from engineering staff was that the town wasn't really interested in owning narrow strips behind a majority of the lots. So a lot of these lots have then been extended deeper, 280, 250 feet, it varies through that area. The narrowest or the shortest lots, if you will, are that 200-foot depth. There's approximately 10 of them backing to the stormwater management facilities. That's in an effort, the stormwater management facilities need to be on lands dedicated to the town, and we wanted to maintain as much buffer as possible, so pushing those lot lines back, push the ponds back closer to the neighbors who wanted to avoid that. So through those 8 to 10 houses, which are numbers 17 to 25, those are right at the 200-foot depth. And then same thing near the other stormwater management facility, we've got three lots over there. The remainder of the lots 1 through 16, those got pushed back to 250 feet deep. So that's right at 20,000 square feet, half an acre lot. And then same thing for 26 through 33. Those are also up to a half an acre in size.
How will the town access that stormwater facility?
So one of the comments was that the town would require a 20-foot wide strip of land not an easement for access to the ponds. That transmission line that I mentioned earlier that the Water Authority owns currently comes right through or along the existing property line between the two parcels. We anticipate providing that 20-foot wide strip to the town here. And then initial discussion with the town engineer was the open space that fronts to the dedicated road at the end of Lot 1 would allow for access back through for the secondary means.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
I had one more question. Getting back to the force main, in the event of a power failure, what would be, I guess, the typical capacity versus, water usage? Would that be designed for what period of time before people would, I guess, have a problem?
Sure. Great question. So typically, these tanks are sized for 150 gallons of storage. For a typical three-bedroom house, which is what we're assuming the average out of this neighborhood would be a three-bedroom. They'll build fours, there'll be threes, twos. Rule of thumb is 100 gallons per day per person or per occupant. Average household size is 3, somewhere around that neighborhood. So 150 gallons of storage represents a half a day's normal use. Now, as we all know, if the power goes out for a day, your hot water isn't hitting, so you're not typically running laundry because the power's out. You're not typically running your dishwasher. You're not typically taking cold showers, or if you are, they're very short. So really, in a day-long power outage, that 150, in theory, provides a full day's use of that limited water usage for storage within the tank itself, let alone, obviously, any type of plumbing within the house, which is minimal.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'd like to open it up for the audience, and I have 2 people who've asked to speak, certainly not limited to those 2, but, and please pardon me if I butcher your name. Do we have a John Schumacher?
Just a brief question relative to any variance relative to the lot sizes that is required here. Did that make sense? In other words, in this area, there's a zoning of so many square feet or acres or whatever. Is there a variance required for this?
There's not a variance required. They're applying for approval under Town Law 278, which is the cluster zoning law.
Yep.
And initially, in order to do that, the underlying zoning, we determine a basic level of density. So Jim at the beginning asked Matt what they originally came in with 78 lots on their conventional plan. So if their clustering wasn't part of the equation, they felt, okay, we can get 78 lots on this property. It would cover the entire property. Town staff, the board, looked at it and said, you can't fit 78 lots. We wouldn't approve that type of plan. So ultimately, it was reduced down to density calculation for 72 lots. The cluster part of it is, okay, we'd like to, we understand that we can do 72 lots, but we'd like to make them smaller than the zoning requires. In return for that, these are the following benefits that we see being provided. So more open space, things like that. So they can't get more lots, but they can put the same number of lots on smaller area and see open space, different.
Okay, that helps me. And then just one other question. Traffic study, any concerns about traffic either on Plank or Jackson?
That is something that the engineering staff will take a look at, and we will take a look at.
I can answer that. According to the Monroe County DOT, who governs these roads, they have no concerns for the traffic associated with this project.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, Linda, is it Shriver? Shriver, all right. Second chance, second time.
Good evening. I'm Linda Shriver. My partner and I live at 1420 Jackson Road, which is those two lots there. I guess the first thing I wanted to say is that having lived in this part of Penfield for almost 20 years, we have greatly appreciated the privacy, the natural setting, the quiet, the solitude, and when I first heard about the project, I wasn't very happy. But I will say that I'm more pleased that this current design maintains such a large amount of green space between us and the development. And I find that a better alternative than having a ton of houses put around our house and building into the wetlands that are already there. So I appreciate the thoughtfulness of trying to maintain the environment that the area already has. With that, I do have a couple questions. Zach has been kind enough to answer a lot of my questions. But tonight you mentioned in redoing the earthwork, and I may not have understood, but it sounds like you're actually going to raise the elevation of some of the topography there by bringing in dirt. Is that going to change the way the water flows, and there'll be more flow of water through this stream that feeds into that major swamp area that cuts across the back of my property?
That's a very good question, and we can get that answered for you.
Okay. Because that drainage with these ponds here is the other piece of that question. Is Zach assures me that that's supposed to be designed in a way that it doesn't change the flow of that water. And
Right.
it shouldn't increase the amount of water buildup in that area next on the corner of my property.
Right, so the requirements are that it reduces or definitely doesn't increase the amount of flow off the site from the present condition. And
Go ahead. You're on a run.
so when they design that, whether it's fill or not, they take all that into account, and that, my guess is, I'm not a drainage expert, but the stormwater retention facilities help to accommodate that.
Okay.
And when we spoke, we both were looking at the layout plan that you kind of see there, but they also provided us a grading plan to account for what you heard tonight. So our conversation still holds up about how drainage would work, even if you bring the house pads up. It accounts for that.
Okay. I'll hold you to that.
Hold the engineers, not me.
Another question is around this. This part of the land, I understand, is going to be dedicated to the town. Will the town allow hunting on that property?
No.
So the zoning or the whatever zoning laws, whatever is it that allows hunting there now will be changed?
Yeah, mostly, it would certainly be the hunting line, and or it's usually a discharge of firearms line. That changes, but no hunting is permitted on town lands.
Okay.
Even bows.
Okay. And this may be a premature question, but I was wondering what kind of lighting might be put along the streets. Is there going to be like big street lights or no lighting at all, or is that too soon to know yet?
We can get that answer. My guess is there's no, other than at the intersections.
Where the main roads where it comes out to
Right,
Plank
so
and
typically we
Jackson.
have a street light there to see that there's an intersection. I don't believe that there is any interior street lighting proposed.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to comment? Yes, ma'am, come on up and introduce yourself.
I'm Heidi Freeman. I live at 1265 Plank Road, which amazingly didn't make his map. My house is 200 feet from the backyard of the development. When we bought this property a few years ago, we figured that, at best we'd have a few neighbors, and now it looks like we're going to have 10 people that back up to our motocross track, which I'd like the town to let me know if that can be grandfathered in, since we bought it with that purpose, because there was one on the neighbor's property. It's never been a problem. I don't want 72 neighbors, where I thought I would, have it more spaced out to cause a change in the property that we paid a value for. Additionally, you said no blasting, correct? Would it be like a piler on a skid steer, or is it just like a hammer jam? I'm worried about, I also have horses on this property, and the blasting, if I'd have to move them off for construction, would be pretty expensive.
Want to take that, Zach? No, sure, I'd love to.
And the other question.
Oh, there we go, keep going. I'm just making a list.
So I currently have no drainage problems. I have 0 standing water. When we dug from the house to the barn or to the indoor, we hit massive rock. I mean, we used Jeff Curran, who's an excavator, I know used a lot locally, hours upon hours of redigging the routes because of the rock and because we couldn't blast. Which means he's going to raise, is it planning on raising this up that high? Because that's going to cause me a lot of drainage problem. Like I said, my house is 200 feet from that line. So I'm really kind of amazed that we didn't make his map. If that was left off intentionally or what that was.
You want me to go?
Sure.
Any more questions before I go?
I don't think so.
Okay, so we'll start with the first one. Your own private motocross track, quote unquote, that you bought that was existing on the property prior to, doesn't really have anything to do with this application, but if you have concerns about it, I would talk to our code compliance officers in the building department. I have never personally dealt with a situation like that. I don't see why anyone would come knocking on your door to say, get rid of it, it's your private property. We would ask that you respect our noise ordinance for not using excessive noise past certain hours, past basically sunset. That's the town code. If you get a knock on our door, it's because of that. So that's really how that would unfold if there were an issue. The second part about blasting, we do not allow any blasting for projects like this when it comes to creating the foundations for basements. They are permitted to do blasting to install the utilities in the roads, such as sanitary sewers, storm sewers, water, gas, so on and so forth. That's usually, if you're going to hear anything, it's going to sound like kind of a pop. It's not a significant noise. We recently went through it at the corner of Atlantic and 5 Mile for that subdivision. The loud noises we all heard were for when they were blasting for the ponds, which were permitted because it is part of the stormwater treatment areas. This, we foresee it as being part of the utility work, where Matt described it being shallower along the road profiles there. So that's how blasting works. You would be notified by the blasting company in advance of it happening. I would encourage you to reach out to them when you receive that card, because we don't coordinate that, but they are required and to be permitted through our fire marshal's office before they do anything, to make sure that all residents in the immediate area are notified. And then it would take place, and they would identify during what days they'd be doing the blasting, so on and so forth.
Okay. And the
Third part for drainage, what you're not seeing there is their grading plan, where currently they're proposing swales along the entire back property lines of all those houses on the eastern border there.
Right in here?
Yep, so there would be a deep swale.
Swale the water right into my yard?
No, it's a swale that works this way, so it catches that water, and collects it, and it has a lot of inlets along that swale line, and their catch basins, collects that water and sends it to those stormwater management facilities in blue that you see on the map.
So
No
underground?
project, correct, that's what the pipes are for. There is, no project in town is allowed to create a negative impact on any adjacent property when it comes to drainage. As the chairman said earlier, typically we require a 25% increase, or 20% increase to reduce, or 20% reduction in the amount of runoff that's generated on a site. That's why they've sized the ponds accordingly here to collect and treat all the stormwater generated on the site for the impervious surfaces such as the roads and the rooftops, so that it gets collected, treated on site, and makes its way toward the natural drainage patterns, not to run towards your property.
Okay.
Anything else?
No, I guess just that, it's disappointing that we thought we'd only have a few neighbors on a 1 acre parcel and that they're changing it. It's not really what we moved there for.
Understand.
Thanks.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to comment? Yes, sir, come on up.
Good evening. My name is Martin Shute. I live at 1050 Plank Road. It really doesn't affect me a whole lot, but my question is, and if my wife was here, she loves sidewalks. You said there's going to be sidewalks on one side of the street in the subdivision. I know there are sidewalks right on Jackson Road, almost by Northrop Road, I believe. How come they're not going to be able to connect them? I mean, the sidewalks should be connected. I mean, we'd love to see them down Plank Road in front of us, but they told us never in my lifetime.
So what you'll see, the process for this is they have to actually make that application, the waiver request, to our town board. Our code requires sidewalks internally and on its frontages, but they do have the right to request a waiver from that. In lieu of that, there's a sidewalk waiver fee that would be associated with it that they would have to contribute if approved for their request. The sidewalk you mentioned to Northrop, that is quite a distance a ways. I mean, relatively speaking, with this project, and obviously the cost of installing sidewalks these days has not gotten cheaper, unfortunately. If anything, it's something the town would examine later on to create these connections on the main roads that we have here for Jackson and Plank, and that's what those funds go towards, is contributing to future additions of sidewalks. Historically, we have not put that cost on a developer to create that connection all the way down to Northrop. And I don't believe I think a sidewalk is actually, no, it's Northrop and Penfield Center. Yeah, so you still have one more road in between that. You got to get past Penfield Center before you get to Northrop.
I do know they come down to Shoecraft Road on Plank Road. They're there now.
Yeah, that's quite a hike from this location.
But when I built my house 25 years ago, I had to sign something that said, when sidewalks touch my land, I have to put sidewalks in. I'm responsible for them.
I'm not aware of an agreement like that. Typically, we take an easement over someone's property to allow sidewalks to be installed once they get near the area, in the event that the town decides to put sidewalks in. That's usually how that works. I've never heard of that.
It was 25 years ago, so
Yeah.
I could be wrong.
Yeah, I've never heard of the town saying you're putting them in when they get close to you. It's typically, we have an easement in place to allow us to install them in lieu of you installing
Maybe
them when you
that's what
build the
I did.
house.
Okay, well, that was my only concern was, you know what I mean? I just would like to see this town connect sidewalks on one side of the street for the kids so they don't end up in the road. So, but other than that, I really have no objections against the subdivision.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
My name's Mahatma Kaur Easterly, and I live at 1426 Jackson Road. Just curious about, is there any talk about what size these houses will be? As far as families, children, how it impacts the school? And is this Penfield School or Webster School?
Penfield.
It will be Penfield.
Blank Road's on Webster.
It's Webster, because we're on North Road.
And I know
No, I spoke too
Penfield
soon,
has,
sorry.
you know,
It's messy over there.
this might be
Because just north,
Penfield
well,
and this might be Webster.
just north of
You
the
could-
property is actually Penfield Schools. So
I know we're Penfield here, but
this is Penfield, so I didn't speak too soon. Hooray, good job, me.
so just curious because I know the Penfield schools are kind of at a maximum. There was talk with the other subdivisions that were being built and how if you have 72 families, say two and that's another 150 kids, has there been any consideration of maybe appealing more to empty nesters as far as building goes, that type of thing? I mean, you need more kind of senior housing or, single-family housing that the kids wouldn't be such an impact. So I just didn't know about the size of the houses, if there's a requirement, and...
There's not a requirement specifically. I think the applicant spoke to a combination of 2, 3, 4 bedroom.
But as far as square
homes.
footage, is there what you're looking at?
I'd be
A minimum or
guessing
maximum?
at probably 1,600 to 2,200 square feet if I'm...
It's a very similar project to 5 Mile Inn.
So similar to the northeast corner of 5 Mile and Atlantic Ave? Similar to that.
Okay. And as far as the town, as far as adding a number of kids to the school district, is that been all?
I've sent this project to the school district for any comments from them. They've been aware of it as it's gone through the process. I haven't heard of any concerns from them.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to comment? Yes.
Hi, I'm Beth Hildreth. I live at 1192 Northrop Road, and I think we've lived there since 1990. We knew at some point that this land would be developed. That's a given. And we are very happy that the buffer area, we love that. That's a beautiful thing for us. Our concern, and we've heard the traffic studies for Jackson and Plank, is Jackson a state road, did you say, or?
County.
County road. Northrop Road, however, runs between Jackson and 250. Northrop Road would be right over here somewhere. And the concern of a lot of residents couldn't be here tonight, but our biggest concern is it's going to be a cut-through street coming down from 250. It's a very quiet road for the most part. There's a section on the west side of the west end of the street that has more residential houses. There's some open property down at the end, and the Smith property still has some farmland on it. So a big concern is the traffic, and we have a lot of children on the west end of the road. These kids, there's no sidewalks there, no plans for sidewalks. With traffic, now you've got an increase now because you have an entrance over here on Jackson Road. So if you're coming from Penfield, you go to Wegmans, you're not going to come out of here, come up to Plank, go down Plank, go on to 250. You're going to come out, you're going to take your first left, which takes you straight to 250. People drive through there now anyhow, that's how the road is. But you're talking about a potential 144 additional vehicles if we go 2 vehicles per household, as it generally is, if not more, and all those cars going down the street. We have a lot of kids that are homeschooled on the street, so they are home all year round. Our neighborhood is a neighborhood that has a lot of people who go for walks. They take their babies out in the carriages. We all talk to each other. We're not all best friends, but we're fairly close, and it is a community. So a huge, huge issue for us is the amount of traffic that this is going to create on our once peaceful road. You know, we're fine with, you know, property being developed. We feel strongly you have a right to do what you need with your own property, and we're good with that. New neighbors are great. However, and I think one of the first of these meetings we went to, there was, I think the only entrance was on Jackson, entrance and exit. So we appreciate having it go out on Plank. I'm not sure if the people on Plank Road appreciate that nearby, but we do. So I would like to see there not be an exit on or entrance at Jackson Road if possible. That would eliminate the extra traffic coming down our road just because you've got all 72 additional houses. And it would definitely be a cut-through street. Much more than Penfield Center is the next road going towards Atlantic Avenue. That also has the potential of being a cut-through, but not as likely because you tend to go closer. So our big concern amongst all of the residents, I can feel my face getting very red, of all the residents on Northrop Road is just the degree of traffic, the safety of the children, and just kind of ruining our neighborhood just because of the increase in traffic. Because people really do, we really do socialize with each other all through the year as we see each other. And it's not very many neighborhoods these days where you have people that speak to each other, see each other, wave to each other, stop and talk as they're walking. So we would prefer that that is not compromised. There's a lot of new families in the neighborhood, and that's part of what their draw was to have a kind of a community like that. We're not, because we're about right here, actually, we are. So, and I've cleared our land so that we actually use all of our land. But it will be highly annoying as the basements are being taken care of, because it will be, might be a pop, but it's going to be closer for us in the 12 houses or so along that part of Northrop. But it's progress, and you have to deal with that. That we can deal with. I don't think our dogs are going to love it, but we can deal with that. But our big issue is that traffic. So I would ask if you could really consider that, because it's huge for our street. It's very much so. But cover everything? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Zach, can we ask the Transportation Committee to take a look at possibly some traffic calming measures in that area?
Yeah.
Get that on the agenda?
Sure.
Okay, anyone else like to comment on this? Yes, sir.
Good evening, Board. My name is Mike Donatelli. I'm at 1387 Jackson Road. Forgive me, I'm new at this. This is my first time.
It's okay.
I'm right here across the street. I'm just curious, you have 6 owners, property owners within this development area, and, oh, okay, now I'm learning. This is the federal wetlands, there's no development that's gonna happen here?
Correct.
And it's gonna stay like that, I guess? It has to stay
One
like-
single-family home would eventually be constructed there when it's sold to that person.
Oh, okay.
It's its own lot right now. That was the 22-acre lot that they referenced during their presentation. That would be permitted.
Stuff for me to see for myself.
Yep, they would be permitted for a single family. It would be a single family permitted use property.
Oh, okay. Is that one of the developers of these 6 that owns this, or is that
No.
6 only through here?
That is part of the developer's entire property.
The whole thing?
Yes.
These 6 people that are all landowners?
Oh, the landowners. I'm sorry, the
Developers,
landowners make up the 2 existing properties that are out there today.
6 landowners?
Yeah, it was messy for us to write that, trust me. But yes, multiple people own the 2 existing properties that make up this project area.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
If you find them, let me know.
I'll snap them up.
Anyone else like to comment on this? Okay. If you have any final statements, if not,
Sure, I
Fine.
would just like to point out, and it may answer a couple of the questions. For the buffering that we're proposing, the developable land that each of these landowners, specific to the east property line, would be 200 feet, and then the remaining 80 to 90 feet is going to be in a conservation easement to the town. That means no cutting of trees, no sheds back there, no pools back there. So that's going to maintain a healthy buffer of the existing vegetation on that side. We touch base on the lighting, just want to confirm no lighting. There'll be, somebody might want to put a carriage light out in front of their house, but no lighting of the street itself. And then just speaking to the roadway entrances from the neighbor on Northrop, we are required by New York State Building Code, anything greater than 30 units on a roadway has to have 2 egress points on that road in order to get over 30 units. So it is required by code, and again, we've run that through County DOT, who has charge over those roads, and they have no concerns from a traffic standpoint. So just wanted to point those out on the record for the board.
okay. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming, and we'll call this hearing closed, and have a great evening. Good to go, Brian, Alexa, whatever your name is.
Hey Siri.
Always listening.
Will he cut all this out? Who knows?
Hey, I know.
Not live.
All right. Let's, since we have representatives from Heritage Christian here, why don't we take care of that first? You're still here.
Get your beer yet.
Not yet. I'll wait.
Okay.
Do you want me to go through my list? Jim, do you have opening
we're
comments?
Create a tabling resolution.
That's
Yeah, we need to-
obviously first and foremost.
We need to create a tabling resolution for this.
One thing that I remembered was, I suggested eliminating the shed. I understand that the stuff is going to be out there, but what about considering adding onto the, say, the northeast corner of the building,
Which makes a lot
and
more sense
eliminating
to
the
me.
shed?
And then they eliminate the issue of having a hiding spot for kids behind there.
Right.
Because even if you put it 1 foot off, then you've got the age-old problem where you can't really maintain it, and somebody
Right.
else puts up a fence. and-
Don't need the variance.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
something to consider. I think we should
Yeah.
put that in the tabling resolution to consider.
Consider alternate options rather than the construction of a shed on the property line. Because the building, if you add it to the building, it will alter
The footprint,
It'll alter
the
the
size.
footprint, alter the size of what they're requesting before the
Understood.
zoning board, but obviously a floor plan can designate what that area is for, in lieu of
Correct.
a 1 foot setback to property line.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean, they're already going for a size variance on the building.
Correct.
So let's say the sheds,
And an area variance on the lot, so it's,
Standard for all daycares too, I wanted to include that on the record. I
Yeah.
don't believe there's a daycare in town that
is on the right size piece of property.
is on the right size piece of property or is less than 8,000 square feet. There are there are a few that are of that, if any.
that's an issue for another day.
Yeah, we have a
But,
list somewhere.
So we have on record the applicant's proposed normal days and hours of operation. But tonight I heard, I believe for the first time, limited nights and weekends. So I'd like to get something in writing from the applicant on that.
Describing what that
We
is.
need to understand what that is. If there's a limitation on the conditional use permit, that might be a consideration for the town board.
That still comes here. Oh, well, usually that would, the this board's reviewing the conditional use permit, so we would review that through the findings and the factors.
They're going to make the call,
Who?
right? The town board?
If the hours are outside some permitted hour that I'm not aware of, yes.
Well, we need to just find out what that is.
Sure.
Do you want to finish your list? Or are you trying to read?
I think more than anything, we need to table this to see what the result is of the ZBA meeting next week.
Yeah, okay, your list.
My list, are you comfortable with the architecture that was proposed?
Yes.
Okay. Talked about the garage and the shed.
No.
Well,
I mean,
should we have this looked at by our consultant? I mean, it would be a simple review, and given the amount of interest in the application, it might be a good idea to just have it take a peek.
up to 4 members.
Okay, I personally don't have any issue.
I don't either.
With the,
I don't either.
with the architecture. I don't, Terry, I mean, I know you got issues with the whole thing, but the architecture.
Yeah.
You're all right with it, or you want
Yeah,
Chris to
no,
do
it's
the
fine.
What about you?
I'm fine with the architecture.
Okay.
Okay, so.
Hearing all fines, I would say that typically this board then is okay with that and doesn't go to the consultant for any further input. I will forward the public comments to the applicant. I dropped the ball on that, so they will get the public comments that you mentioned, Jim, tomorrow. If there's anything to respond to, they can. If not, staff can respond to those comments. We did have a chance to review them. They came in this week. So we will review those, and if you'd like, we can respond accordingly or await responses from them as well.
Okay.
The big question, I guess, I mean, zoning board, they're asking for variances basically for setbacks and the child daycare restrictions that are in the code. Before I get into this, is there any additional landscaping concerns from the board? They have seen our consultant's memo. They have provided a updated plan in response to that. It included a couple more trees along the property line and internally. There are foundation plantings along the frontage of the building facing Atlantic. Is there any additional landscaping the board would like to see, or would you like Bruce to take a second whack at it? It's right now, it was more of, we focused our memo the first time on if there were any plantings that would be installed near the child play area on the west side of the building. Those, for certain reasons, were not installed.
Yeah, I think Bruce should take a second look at it, because, I mean, they're talking about taking every tree out. I mean, is there anything?
Well,
we
he
can
knew
say?
that before, but.
That was part of their sketch plan applications, and in those applications, we had,
Bruce?
not Bruce, it was a tree arborist, had reviewed those, one that is well-known and well-reputed, has a good reputation in the area. I believe so, yes. They provided a memo confirming that the trees on the property were in poor health and replanting would be more appropriate. If this board feels you'd like to see more trees in place on the property to offset that, you can ask.
I leave that up to Bruce, but there is a question about this.
Okay.
This one tree on the corner right here, this tree that the cursor is on.
Yes.
So I'd be interested in seeing what the growth rate and the height of the foliage is on that, just for line of sight in the future.
Yeah.
And AJ, I heard you say.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've said many times before that I hate that people clear the whole thing. And I get the fact that, oh geez, these trees are all weed trees or whatever, but they're still trees.
Well, these trees were not in good health, and some of them were in the building pad, if I remember right. But
Yeah, the whole lot. I walked it a few times.
But
I'm accepting it. I'm just not excited about it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But to
Can
your
we make
point,
that part of the public record?
it's on there. To your point, though, AJ, I heard you say that you'd like to see additional plantings be installed to kind of offset what's being taken out from the property. So that's the direction I can give Bruce and ask for any recommendations of what he'd like to see there in response to that.
Yeah, great.
Because just shooting it back to him,
That's
he's
fair.
going to say they've complied with my memo, and I just needed more direction from the board for that. So
Okay.
thank you for that. Now I'll just land on the big topic, traffic, the traffic impact statement that was reviewed by this board and our consultant through the sketch plan process earlier this year. It's still current under this application. Do you want soak time on that? Are you comfortable with what was discussed by their consultant who prepared the impact study?
Could we ask for clarification on the bus versus car? So if there's a quantity of 7 vehicles queued, how do we know whether 6 of them are buses, which would be, what's a bus, 50 feet long? 48 feet long, something like that? Depends on the bus. But let's call it the school buses that are leaving Bay Trail, right? Long,
Standard bus.
big, long
Standard bus.
school buses. So 7 of those is going to take up more space than 7 Priuses and smart cars.
Mini Coopers.
So I mean, I obviously don't expect that, okay, this one's a smart car, this one's a Prius, this is a pickup truck. But could they clarify the difference between a bus or a truck? I doubt that there's, I mean, if there's any big trucks, like an
Let me-
18-wheeler, I
let me
really
pose
doubt
an
that.
alternate solution for you. Why don't we ask Terry to come in, a special meeting, and just sit down with him and get his opinion on these issues? I mean, the applicant's consultant sat here a few weeks ago and described in detail the anatomy of a traffic study, and described in detail tonight what they did. So I know he's not happy, you're raising concerns. So why don't we just sit down with Terry and ask him these questions from our own consultant, who doesn't have a vested interest in what happens with the project either way, and see if you guys are satisfied then. We're tabling the application anyhow.
So we'd be talking at the September,
12th.
what do we have on the docket?
3 public hearings.
I don't mean for a public hearing, I mean a special meeting in the town hall during the day. You, me, Terry, whoever else wants to.
Well, we can't have a quorum. That would be more appropriate in a work session setting for Terry to come in as a consultant to discuss that with the board. Is what I can say.
Make it happen.
Yeah, we can.
You know what I'm talking about.
We can extend it.
We've done it before.
If anything, it's to clarify what was stated today and if how they counted the vehicles, whether car or bus is consistent with how they typically count vehicles for all studies.
I don't know if that level of time is necessary. If a suitable explanation could be provided in writing from the applicant explaining how they view these things. My guess, tell me if I'm wrong, is that, the feeling is 7 buses doesn't equal 7 cars when it comes to trying to pull out onto Scribner Road and make a left.
But how does
Would that be an
change?
accurate statement?
Yeah, I'm surprised that they counted the buses as cars myself, but.
And I guess that's what I'm trying to find out, were they or were they not? And when they have these counts and so on, what's the...
Okay, the wheel is traveling over the cable, or it's traveling by a counter.
It's counting a vehicle.
It's counting a vehicle. A big vehicle, a small vehicle.
And just to kind of recapture what was in the public hearing, they did say that the count that they reflected in the study included cars and buses. As Jim is saying, every vehicle that goes through it, they counted it as a vehicle, which is standard procedure. Obviously, this is a unique area because of the proximity of the school to the intersection, which I'm sure a lot of people weren't a fan of when they added the curb cut from the school that close to the intersection. Doesn't change anything, but what they said in the public hearing was that both cars, buses, vehicles alike were included in the study.
All right, so let's say during the peak time, would it be fair to say that if you counted each car as 1.8 or some sort of factor that you know that there's a certain number of cars leaving, heading south on Scribner at that time. It's not all buses, but what's the percentage of buses versus cars? And if a bus is twice as long as a car,
It's for a 20-minute period. It's
Could I
a
offer
20-minute period
I get it.
in the morning.
Could I offer you this, AJ?
Yeah.
The tabling resolution could have an item in there asking if there's any way for the applicant and their traffic consultant to identify how buses would have been, how buses would be accounted for in the counts that they recorded.
Sure. Yes.
I think that's what you're looking for.
Yes.
Because to try and reverse engineer the data is probably difficult, but we can ask that question, get it in writing, and have clarification about that part of the process.
And we can send their response to our consultant and have him comment.
Correct.
Perfect.
Correct.
Perfect. Okay.
Okay.
Other items.
That's all I got for that project.
Tabling? Tabling? Any items?
Now, if I remember, the trash was going to be in totes in the garage?
No, that's a dumpster enclosure Doug's pointing to.
Oh, missed it. Okay, so there is a, okay.
The garage.
It's part of the garage. It was in that elevation, if you look on the...
Yeah, sort of
Plans
stuck,
they gave us.
a little bit.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you want to move to table?
I move to table.
I'll second.
Okay, that was Burton and Knauer.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Hetzke.
Aye.
Burton.
Aye.
Knauer.
Aye.
Tidings.
Aye.
Okay. It's up to you if you want to stick around for the other two. All right. AJ, tell me where you want to go for marathon.
Let's start,
You get subdivision or you get Penn Fair?
let's do subdivision since it's the most recent. I mean,
Forest Ridge Estates.
any comments?
I'm still concerned about
The
the full
drainage
basement thing.
and
You know, I mean, how many problems do we have in this town in fairly close proximity to this site where some people have industrial sump pumps that are running 24 hours a day? You know, it's just where, you know, I very much appreciate what they did, altering the pads and giving us a profile of where the bedrock is, but sitting on bedrock I still think is a bad idea. It takes a small change in the water course, and if we've got sump cracks, and the sump cracks are...
well, I mean, if it's something that's
yeah, and they're going to be
recessed in the bedrock, they're
flush
full.
with the slab and sitting down 18 inches below bedrock, then those pumps will be overcome in a short amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've got basement flooding issues again in the town that has too many basement flooding issues. I think they're close, but I think that there's, you know...
So what I will say to that is a reminder, this is for preliminary approvals only for
Understood.
the layout. So part of, as part of this application, again, they would come back for another application. As part of this application, the board would document the fact that there are those concerns, that they need to be addressed before coming back with final site plan drawings.
Yeah, I think we would
that.
be remiss if we didn't.
I agree completely, and that's what this application can do for you. Any of these concerns, they can be documented through your resolutions, and passed on to the applicant for the next phase of this, for the next phase of review. So that's just what I'll say on those technical comments that we've started to review and they're still addressing through their designs.
Otherwise, I think they did a very nice job of.
Yep. From what they started with to what is now.
Where we are now.
Huge difference.
And
Yeah, agree.
the buffering, and you could hear from the neighbors that they were pleased to see the
Yeah,
amount of.
and you know, it's
green
interesting because you look at that and you think, oh my God, they're, little slivers. And, but
278.
they're actually decently sized lots.
Most of them are, yeah.
Yeah, big lots. So, all right,
so-
any other items that we
Yeah,
need to
well,
put in here?
A few more questions. Do we have a concentration for development with that many force mains?
No, the only thing closest to this with having, you're saying the grinder pumps?
Yeah.
Was Weybridge Court on Jackson Road, which was for 12 lots.
Okay.
And it's worked for the past 2 years. It's the same
Okay.
low pressure force main system. Our design criteria for the town was just updated to include specs and requirements for this type of design based on what other municipalities have done over time. This is not new technology. It's just new
Right.
at Penfield.
Yeah.
So we adopted a lot of that language and those design criteria from other municipalities that have used it successfully. So they're going to be required to comply with that now that it's on the books and has been adopted by the town board.
My office has been involved in projects like this. These systems work very well.
Okay, yeah, and it sounds like there's really, for that development, there's really not, because of the bedrock and some other factors, there really isn't an alternative.
Correct. There's also, the alternative is probably more blasting would be needed for utilities to get a gravity system in there. There would need to be a pump station installed that would have to be dedicated to the town to pump it down Plank Road to get to a high point and then get it back down to the manhole at Shoecraft, which
So
is
it'd be a
far more expensive and
lot of infrastructure.
Exactly, and the town wasn't interested in acquiring another pump station
Yeah.
at this time.
Okay.
All right. Regarding traffic on Northrop Road, I can appreciate the lady's concerns. Speaking for myself, my daughter now lives north of Plank on 5 Mile. I live south of 441 off east of 250, so I take that route on a fairly regular basis. And I sometimes turn down Jackson Road and sometimes go straight over to 250. I've never gone Northrop Road unless I specifically want to just go for a scenic drive. But if I'm taking Jackson south, I take it to Wayland or Atlantic. So can I see some cut-through traffic? Maybe a little bit, but nothing like what I don't think that it's going to be anything like what they're afraid of.
I agree with you. I'm very familiar with that stretch.
Bless you.
But sometimes a simple request from the Transportation Committee to put up a couple of signs, children at play,
Yeah. Yep.
can have an impact on how people travel through there and can make the residents feel
Absolutely
better.
And they
Agree.
do,
I agree.
and to add on to that, they always have the option, and I meant to speak it during the public hearing, that I would recommend her and her neighbors to petition the town board or request of the town board to have sidewalks installed one side on that road to be put on our list for future sidewalks, as long as it's not in,
I think it's already on the list, Zach.
I'm sure it is. We have a lot of places on the list. This town is infamous for gaps of sidewalks. AJ has them in his neighborhood, I
Well,
think.
there's big gaps of development on Northrop Road. So-
Yeah, there's gaps everywhere, so that's always an option as well, but to your point, we can certainly get some input from the Transportation Committee about if any signage is necessary in the area in the foreseeable future for that area of town.
Okay.
Hearing all that, because it is preliminary approval only, would the board like staff to start drafting an approval resolution for this project? They have,
Sure.
they're
I
in
think
a-
it's appropriate, yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
Any objections to that?
We will
Okay.
begin working on that for
Somebody
your...
wanna table?
Yep.
I'll second it.
Sorry, who made the
Did you?
motion?
Yeah, I will move.
You'll move?
Yeah.
I'll second it.
Second. Hetzke,
Aye.
Burton,
Aye.
Canower,
Aye.
Tidings.
Aye.
Okay. Matt's last one of the night.
Going on.
You don't want to do Baytown next?
Why you gotta...
Yeah, let's just.
It's like we're going back to the top of the order is what you're saying. We're at the bottom here. We're going from 4 to 1.
Kidding.
4 to 1, top of the order. Okay, so Starbucks. Sorry, Matt. Penfield Plaza.
Starbucks at Empire Plaza.
Are you envisioning that? Or are you?
Yes. I don't really have any concerns.
Penfield Plaza we're talking about.
Oh, Starbucks. You said
Baytown.
Starbucks.
I did. I said no.
He's kidding.
Oh my God.
6.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah.
This
Poor
is-
timing. Poor timing.
This is one of the best things that could happen to a very important corridor.
Oh, I
in
think it's
town.
a great, and I like where they're going with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
The grassed islands and the curbing and segregating the parking areas and the facade improvements.
Really, yeah.
That would only be my only
Redoing that
question.
whole
Somebody was
That
concerned about
plaza's-
the facade
Yeah.
down the end.
yep.
Was everybody happy with that answer? 'Cause
You
down
mean on the eastern
on
portion?
the end of the plaza? I know there's somebody had a question about that, concern
Jim.
about changing.
Yeah, I want it to be in keeping, pretty consistent.
Right.
That'd be one thing.
I mean, it's-
Unless there's a
At
compelling
some
reason.
point.
Unless there's a compelling reason why, okay, the Rochester Regional Health section has to be, let's say, branded a certain way, and they
They do.
want to
Which it
make
does.
sure that
They do
the,
have their own branding.
and they want the other part to be a separate look, but complementary.
Right.
That, if that's the case, then I guess we want to know about it
Right.
and be convinced that that's.
I agree. I
But
mean, it might
otherwise,
look
I
nice and
like,
new,
I like
refreshed.
that,
Yeah.
I'd like a consistent look
Yeah,
throughout.
you want
the-
to
the
refresh
building.
that, hopefully they want to refresh that site too, the facade. You know, you got Verizon, you got CVS, I don't know what else is down there.
Dragon House Chinese restaurant,
You
there's a
know, the pizza
Verizon
place.
store,
You
there's
know,
a
just
Little
the background
Caesars,
to
there's,
the, you know, the Verizon, you know,
Dog groomer.
just
Dog groomer.
change that facade, so they might want to take a look at that.
Taylor.
Good job.
Yeah, I mean, we go there all the time.
So, supportive of the building addition, supportive of the architecture that's being proposed for RGH.
Yeah.
Yep.
The other part that didn't really come up was that, well, I think Matt briefly mentioned it, the applicant mentioned it. On the site plan, they are proposing, and I included this in their legal description, a preliminary approval for a 78, site plan please, Doug. A 7,800 square foot future building there. No concerns at this time from this board for that. Our engineers have looked at it from the aspect of traffic flow there. You know,
Yeah,
we're
just, I
coming.
mean, I
Actually,
know
that
that
would go
when
a
they
long
came in
way- sorry.
before, there was just the snow storage. but
Void.
It was a much bigger building that was proposed before, I
Yes,
think.
it was.
14,000 square feet or something
yeah.
like that. And so,
And just to note, the existing subway that is on the premises now,
that would go away.
that would go away as part of this. I believe they've actually closed that subway very
Yeah,
recently.
they're moved out.
Yep, so that's in the future, but I,
$15 minimum wage. Anyway, that's my political statement for the night.
way to slide it in there. So I wanted to capture
They
that.
can't automate making subs.
They
Can't
probably
have a robot
they
make subs.
Probably have in China, who knows? So I want to get that on there. Again, the layout is much improved from what they started with us. Green space is increasing with it. We have the cross-axis connection. at the northeast corner to what is Platinum Office Building. That's their parking lot back there. Some site work would be done on that, as well as on the neighbor's property to the east. Also owned by the same managing company who has Platinum Office. I spoke with them earlier this week. They're fully on board with everything.
Yep.
So everyone will be in touch with one another to coordinate what's necessary to provide that connection as part of this project. No improvements are being proposed to the right-of-way of the state on 250. They're maintaining the curb cuts as is. They are just improving them internally to better define curb cuts and pathways for vehicles. We have a couple technical comments that we'll get back to them with based on this plan that we reviewed so far. And Jim, I did hear, would you like a little feedback on the architecture of like the brickwork that they are proposing?
Yeah, the
Wraps?
columns, you mentioned.
Just the column wraps.
Column, would you like
Yeah,
to, would you like to require it?
You know, I hate to say require it. I hate to tell people what they have to do, but, you know, I think they
Strongly
should consider it.
Yeah.
I mean, their spindly, narrow,
Right, but this is
1970s.
something different. I mean,
Looks
right
like
now
it's
it's just
brick.
poles, I think.
I think those are what they wanted to paint, was that brickwork?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They wanted to paint those that brown
So
color?
they're just, and with all of this beautiful facade,
Yeah, I agree. They should strongly consider.
They could reface those, yeah.
well, so that synthetic stone, it glues on with a thin set. I mean,
And you're looking for this up the whole
I
column
don't
length,
care.
or
You
kind
know,
of
I
like
don't-
halfway up? Just some sort of treatment to break it up?
Something, yeah.
Okay. If anyone's, before we leave this topic, Jim, this one's for you. We went out and took pictures of the Rondequoit location they referenced. And there's a couple existing pictures in there. Doug can pull them up here, but I printed them because obviously we always lose image quality here for you as a handout, just to give you an idea of what it looks like with some of the panel work. On the left there you see it. Obviously this is a different facade with the glass work, but in terms of brick, I really wanted to showcase the panels. There's a few other pictures of that later on in the, Mark went out and took some pictures.
Well, you got Platinum, that's a modern looking building.
Yeah.
You have, we're kind of setting this
Keep going.
quasi-contemporary design for that
There.
area.
That didn't sound good. Need a new vacuum. So, yeah, here's kind of a close-up of what that textured look of the two-sided panel she showed during the meeting. This is that material there in the real world.
Good.
All right, so no concerns to that. They are required to
Do we
give us-
want to have Chris take a look?
Your question, not mine.
Architectural consultant, do we want him to?
I don't see the harm. I mean, I think she did a beautiful job, but I don't see the harm. It is a landmark at the, you know,
Location, yeah.
at a really critical
Very visible.
intersection in the community, yeah.
Okay.
He might have some
I'm hearing
ideas.
2.5 right now.
No, I think for a project that's this big,
A good idea.
I think it's a good idea.
Okay,
Because there may be some things that we don't see.
yep.
And make any recommendations on that facade too, along the front of the plaza, as long as you.
Yeah, right now,
Right.
right now, I would
Right.
approach that, and I would plan to document this in your ultimate resolution. That area is subject to additional review, because I believe, and this isn't speaking with the applicant today, that they want to have a similar look and feel to what they're doing with the remodel that we discussed today for RGH, to Rochester Regional Health. But that part of the plaza is still under their control, the eastern end of it, not of the hospital, but of the plaza owners. They want to have a similar look and feel. It's contingent upon their deal with Rochester Regional Health. So I think there's still some room to be done there. I think they're showing on their elevation drawing that this could be applied to it. But I think they want to go a slightly different direction that's in kind with what's out there, what will be out there, but still have its own kind of presence along the existing businesses. So I would kind of reserve a time for further review of that,
Okay.
when it comes in for final detail on that part of the
Alright, that's
building.
Well, we can send it back to Chris again at that time if they
Completely
if they modify
appropriate.
the elevations.
Completely appropriate.
Okay.
I can also structure it that way too in the wording. If a different design is chosen, then you'll be required to do this and come back to the board for review and approval. I'll probably do it that way.
All right.
Table it.
Table it with that. At the same time, because you're very comfortable with the architecture being proposed and the layout of the parking improvements, with the exception of seeing a landscaping plan at some point down the road, now that we are comfortable with it, I would ask that they kind of turn that around for your final review at a next meeting to provide that landscape plan. But would you
Yeah, do we
like,
want to get a resolution prepared?
would you like a
Sure.
resolution prepared?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Make the motion, we'll start that.
At the table.
Yes.
I'll make the motion to table it. Yes.
I'll second.
Tidings, Burton.
Hetzke,
Aye.
Burton,
Aye.
Canower,
Aye.
Tidings.
Aye.
He's locking you in. You can't leave now.
Thanks, Doug.
Okay.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
Yes.
Great job tonight.
All right. Baytown?
Baytown, Starbucks.
I think, I mean, is there any, what haven't we covered on that?
My only question to you is architecture. I mean,
I'm
Paul
fine
did a
with
great
it.
job. You guys did, asked all the right questions. Lighting's addressed, landscaping's addressed. If you're comfortable with the architecture, that they've incorporated elements of the plaza into it, like we've done with similar projects recently. All they're looking at is going before the zoning board for signage and nothing else site related. So, as a modification to the original site plan and preliminary and final approval for this site work, and again, modification to that 2008 approval of the greater plaza expansion, this building's associated with that, so we would document it. But for final site plan approval for this, would you like a resolution started?
Yes, I would say yes.
What about the bailout lane there? Just to let you guys know.
Oh, there?
You needed it said the need for a bailout lane to drive through.
There's one right there.
They responded, they don't feel they need that. This just provided a better alignment with the striping there. You know, if somebody did make an order and had to leave, they can. More so though that it helps the traffic flow for ESL ATM drive-through to give people the room to navigate that turn.
Okay,
I second it.
I'll move to table.
Second.
Okay, that was
AJ and Terry.
Hetzke and Tidings. Thank you. Hetzke,
Aye.
Burton,
Aye.
Canower, Tidings.
Aye.
All right.
That's a wrap, folks.
Any other new or old business? to
I'll just
discuss?
tell you that Allison did print out and we'll email you a copy of it, tentative schedule for 2020
Okay.
of the meetings. If there's conflicts, let us know. We try to avoid all the major holidays. It's very similar to this year's schedule with the exception of February's actually in the second week of the month now as opposed to the first like it was this year.
Allison, did I tell you I won't be here in September?
12th or all of September?
12th.
Okay.
Thank you for letting us know.
I'm sorry?
She won't either.
Zach, did you tell Zach? Yep.
Okay, with that, we adjourn. Thanks, everybody. Allison, thank you.
Thank you. One for 10.